Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 119 of the Simpa Life podcast. I hope you are feeling fine and doing well. We are back with another weekly episode. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I've just booked another 3 in a row. So we've got some fantastic guests coming up. We've obviously had some fantastic guests previously. Check out last week's episode with Matt Clifton, which was, I think, quite humorous. We enjoyed that quite a bit. And yeah, today's guest is probably going to suffer a slight bit of the same problem because my 3 to 2 microdose schedule means that I microdosed this morning. So I'm a little bit hyper. I've also been drinking a lot of caffeine in the preamble. So this is going to be a very fun recording. Let's just jump straight into it with today's guest because we've just been sat talking for half an hour and come with some wonderful content and subjects and topics to discuss. So I want to jump straight in with today's guest, who is the founder and managing director of MPK Media, a creative media agency based in Liverpool and host of the MPK Hydroponics Live podcast, an honest, informal, and passionate podcast about growing crops hydroponically. Ooh, I look forward to finding out what crops. They're a licensed drone pilot and a self-described book nerd. We do like book nerds on this podcast. They are Stephen Brookes. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad I made it through that intro. I don't know why I feel the need to speed up my speaking on the way through it and deciding not to breathe, but we got to the other side and I survived.
Some people listen to podcasts at 1.5. Audiobooks at 1.5 to get through them. It doesn't work with our podcast with the Scouse accent, and it's not going to work with your podcast either as well.
No, it's just going to bring out some proper northernisms, I think, with your Scouse, and I may end up, as I often do, because I'm a bit of a linguistical chameleon, probably end up imitating a bit of Scouse unintentionally, so I apologise ahead of time for that one.
It's fine. We'll have a laugh at it.
We will. Let's jump straight in and kind of get through these initial questions. And so let's figure out what brought you here today. So I suppose, what inspired you initially to start MPK Media and the podcast? Where did kind of this genesis come from?
The podcast was the sort of start of it all. We had the shop. So I think to tell you about the podcast, I'm going to tell you about the shop. The shop started in 2012 with my good friend Thomas. We met in uni. We had an instant affinity because he was ex-paras. I was thinking about going in the Marines. I was a big military fan at the time. We spoke about climbing, mountaineering, walking, the fan dance, which is what the SAS do as part of their selection. We hit it off. Thomas, so I was helping Thomas with the theory of outdoor education with PA. That was our degree. And Thomas would help me with all the knot tying and basically map and compass. It was a very good friendship, and we bounced off well with each other. Thomas used his university loans and his grants very wisely, actually, and went and set up MPK, the shop, in 2012. Left uni, went and set up the shop. I was either going to go to the military or probably become a PE teacher. They were the two things I was enjoying. I was loving physical fitness and nutrition. A tutor messed up a reference, so I couldn't do me PGC, which is the PA. I had to have laser eye surgery, so that put the Marines on hold, which I had, and it's slowly come back now, which is like 15 years later. And in that sort of weird time, I thought, well, I'll go and do a master's. So I ended up doing a master's in public health and nutrition because I was interested in it. And in that time, Thomas was setting up the shop, and he says, look, he said, I know about setting up this shop and that, but you're the book guy, you're the theory guy, you can learn, come and help me. So I was like, something different there, let's go into that. So I went and helped them set up the shop, and I got immersed in the world of hydroponics and growing crops and plants hydroponically, which was, I'd probably say, the best. It has been the best 10 years of my life, meeting the people that I've met, learning the things I've learned, going to the places I've been. It's been amazing. And so in that process, we were 2014 running the shop. Everybody was coming in with the same question. Why are my leaves going yellow? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why do my plants look like this? The same questions day in, day out. And so I'd heard about this fella called Joe Rogan, and I was listening to his podcasts. And podcasts in 2014 were not really a thing. You could say to anyone, Have you heard this podcast? They'd be like, what's a podcast? That's what it was like in 2014. So I said to Thomas, we should do a podcast for our customers. And he goes, what's a podcast? I go, well, it's this thing. You get mics and you record yourself and you put it out there into the world for people to listen to. And he's like, to be fair to him, if he didn't understand anything, he had full faith that I did. And he went, let's do it. So he went and bought the mics, bought all the equipment, and we recorded episode 1. And it was an introduction to hydroponics. And then episode 2 was, why do my leaves turn yellow? All with the thinking of, we'd do 15 to 20 episodes, we'd answer all these questions, and we'd just put it online and say to our customers, look, we've got so much information to give you in a nice way. Don't waste our time talking to us for an hour on why your leaves are going yellow. Listen to these podcasts, get yourself a general base level of knowledge, and then come back and let's talk about some interesting shit. And so that's what we did. And we just carried on, got to episode 20, got some really good downloads, really enjoyed ourselves, and just sort of massively branched out. And then that was our first delve into media. At the same time, I was opening up Instagrams. It's funny because thinking back, I still know the people that used to say to me, I was going around, I was shouting from the rooftops. I'd be like, look, Instagram, you share pictures of this and that's going to be brilliant. And they'd be like, Instagram's for sharing pictures of your dinner. Why do I want to put my business on there? And that sounds so crazy now, but that is the feedback that I was getting from a lot of people. Similar to TikTok now, people like, it's just for girls dancing, doing stupid dances. I'm like, I've been through all this before. Okay, mate, you crack on thinking TikTok's just for stupid dances, and I'll see you in 10 years when you're gutted about it. So yeah, the podcast was born, media was born, or the fact that we did media was born, and it grew from there. And it sort of, we got into doing videos for the shop. Then the progression. YouTube grew. We were doing how to set up grow tents on our YouTube channel. Then I was like, this is boring, like showing people how to set up tents. We need to make it more fun and interactive. So we set up the MPK show on YouTube and just had an absolute scream. Like we basically did a series like of Thomas getting captured and he was a clone, and we just went nuts. It was completely shit, but we had the best time of our lives, and hopefully we taught a few people about how to grow from start to finish. And that's sort of where it all started, really.
Wow, quite a journey. So I suppose it's a few moments in your life that have kind of directed you towards this, but you seem to have really found a passion within it. And it's something sort of we were discussing in the preamble. I suppose now is quite a good time to kind of go on to it. Was the seeming potentially what appears to be an absence of passion within the industry that doesn't seem to be the same level of excitement like the individual pursuit of knowledge. People don't seem to want to be educated in this space. They almost want to be reassured that what they believe is true.
Yeah, that's perfect for one of my biggest beliefs ever from 10 years ago and still today, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I love talking about it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know about it, it blew my mind. And I've been through this whole process. So, like I said, did a master's in public health nutrition. And when you do a master's, you think you know it all. And you absolutely don't. And I was fortunate enough to not quite have big enough of an ego to carry on trying to learn. So Dunning-Kruger effect, for those that don't know, is just it's basically a graph, and it looks like two hills. When you start to learn a subject, you get up to the first peak very quickly, and you can learn quite a bit. And when you get to that first peak, you can think you know it all. And then if you've got enough humility to carry on pushing yourself to try and learn and to listen to people who've been there and done it and got more experience than you, you'll very slowly and then very quickly realize you know absolutely nothing. I think I went through this with Hydro as well. Now, when you realize you know absolutely nothing, you've got all the humility and you'll listen to everybody around you, whether they've been doing it for a month because some people will learn stuff in that month that you don't know about, whether you've been doing it for 20 years, you're listening and you're gathering information. And then very, very slowly over 10, 15, 20 years, you make the very slow journey to the second peak, which I would call mastery. But even then, that hill never stops. You never stop learning. And that is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you learn, the less you know. And that is also the sort of the pity I've got for people who don't ever get off that first peak, because you just don't realize how much you could learn. And my passion comes from, I love learning. I love finding out new things. I love reading books. So as I'd read this book, I'd be like, oh my God, that's brilliant information. Let's go and put it into practical use. Let's go and, because there's only so much you can do from books. Let's go and learn in real time. And let's go and speak to this person on this Facebook group. And I've learned this. What do you think? And it was just from 2012 to 2000, I'll say it, before COVID, our industry was amazing. And if you were in our industry, which is the hydroponics industry in the UK, you were very privileged to have been part of that. Some people have opened up shops during COVID and post-COVID, and they've got no idea what it used to be like. And it was such an amazing industry. I absolutely love it. Still do love it, but I don't love the lack of people wanting to learn. It's like you said before, my mate says, and then that's it. They know everything then. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think, the Dunning-Kruger effect is something that I bring up a lot in my written work and in the articles that I write, as a way of obviously just trying to get people to be wary of extreme confidence. Because I suppose the pitch points, the up and down on the graph, I think it's confidence and knowledge, or competency and knowledge, whichever one it is. And it's you're right. I think most people are like, what's that fucking roller coaster at Alton Towers?
I don't know. I hate
Genesis or whatever. It hangs you over the edge for a second. And I think the fear, the point of it is it holds you for a second so you can see straight down. And obviously that's what induces the fear and gives a primordial adrenal response. And you then obviously get real fucking excitable as it drops you. And obviously the reassurance of safety when it catches you at the bottom, sort of thing. And that's the thrill of it, as it were. But I think that's what's kind of happening. They're looking down and they see that lack of confidence, and they're so under the illusion of this kind of 21st century neoliberalist capitalist illusion that confidence is the only thing that matters. And in some ways it kind of does, because humans, we intrinsically follow it. We can't fucking help it. We think confidence equals competency. Therefore, we become confident in them to competently lead us. The whole political trap that we've fallen in for a fucking century at this point. But
you've made a great point there, and I'm sorry to butt in. I literally watched a video yesterday, and this will hopefully, it opened up my eyes. It'll hopefully open up a lot of people's eyes into how you can be misled and manipulated, for want of a better word. This guy is a public speaker and teaches other people how to public speak. So let's do it real time, because I'll try this out, because I will use this myself because it's brilliant. Ask me the hardest question you could ever ask. Like, make it as difficult as you can and ask me a question. Make it up if you want to.
I'm struggling on, can we quantify what hard means? Because am I going for something like too difficult to answer, as in...
Too difficult to answer, yeah. Like quantum physics shit. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, so what happens to light at the edge of a black hole?
Okay, so that's a really interesting question. And there's probably one that a lot of people would want to know here as well. But with the limited amount of time that we've got on this presentation, on this podcast, I don't really think I could do that question justice. So what we'll do is, if you're happy to, we'll take it offline and we'll get into the nitty gritty of what light does at the end of the universe, which I'd absolutely love to answer for you.
Again, it's politicking. We saw it in the New Labour movement in the end of the 20th century. Obviously, it was pre-existent prior to before that, but Tony Blair perfected it. He fucking just was able to take whatever it was that came in, and he'd run it through that machine exactly that it shows that, no, this person, that they're so valuable, they can't answer my question, and I'm stupid for almost asking them to answer this question. It's that trickery that keeps us in disbelief of ourselves, when actually it's, as we know, as we just said, from the Dunning-Kruger effect, actually, if you're questioning what you're doing, you are in some way competent.
Yeah.
Because if you weren't, you haven't got to that point. Exactly. You see, you haven't decided to jump off the edge and actually experience and learn and grow from it.
So if I was, and to sort of clarify my position on that, because I don't want to manipulate people. If I don't know the answer, I think it's much better to say you don't know the answer. 100%. If you're a politician, there's no sort of way out of that. But if I was, let's say, for example, if somebody asked me a question on drone law in the UK, I should know that. If for some reason I had a mental block, but I knew I could answer it, just give me a bit of time, I'd probably use an answer like that. If I was up on a stage or I was having a chat in a big room and you asked me a question I genuinely didn't know, but potentially should know, I'd go, you know what, it's a brilliant question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I will find out the answer for you and I'll come back to you with it. So it's like, and I feel like I'd like to say that if I was ever given a speech or I was asked my opinion on something, just to be honest and upfront is much better, but I don't need to be a politician, so it's easy for me to say that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same approach I've tried to take with sort of my work with this, that when anybody's reached out with something, if I haven't known, rather than kind of fluffing through and wanting to keep some kind of artifice, some faux illusion of what I believe other people's like interpretation and presentation of my character to be, I'll literally kind of go, I don't know, give me 24, 48 or however long it's going to take me, whatever I'm up to. I'll reach out to somebody in a field that'll connect me to a field, or I'll try and go to a source somewhere through my wide network and pull that for you. And if I can't then arrive at a way of learning that from that person to disseminate that to that in the kind of the Einstein way of, if you can't teach a 5-year-old, then you haven't learned the thing. That's not to belittle anybody that I've ever passed information on to. That's not what I mean. But that's where I try and get to. I always think for all my nephews are quite getting toward the point of growing up, I still think of them as little kids. And I think, how shit, I would have thought with them about this. And it's then, if I can get it to that point, I've understood it. And then if I can integrate that with the rest of my knowledge, then I've grown. So actually, by having that moment of vulnerability, you gain more from it. And I think in a public speaking setting, you gain more respect from people. And I think politics is the only thing that's illusory to it. Like, it's the only illusion that it's like the kefabe of wrestling. So the politicians can't ever break that illusion. They have to play within it at all times, and their language is so filtered and artificial and pre-constructed. But that's infected like the CEOs and the boardroom and the venture capitalists and the market as a general concept. And that's now leaking down into this hustle culture, these entrepreneurs, when they're just forcing us to have 17 jobs to fucking eat bread.
Yeah, you know. I mean? Well, there's one thing that I think if somebody listening, and obviously we both do similar sort of stuff in different subjects, the main thing for people is to give them something. And so if I could give on this podcast with you, if I could give anything to anybody, it would be, whether Simpa says it or I say it or somebody's been doing it for 20 years says it, go and do your own research. Like, listen to people, but do not be manipulated by people. I've just potentially shown how easy it is for me to come across as an astrophysicist expert. And I've just used my words to get out of having to answer it. That happens every day. So do your own research and go and find out for yourself. Take on all of these pieces of information and then go and explore further. Like, further reading in terms of is what it'd be called academically.
Exactly that. It's never take anything as gospel. Everyone is as unique and as vulnerable and as broken and as powerful and as corruptible as anybody else.
Yeah.
And so even if you hear something and it resonates with you, I would actually argue more that needs to pique a curiosity in you. Why does it resonate with you? Is it something of nostalgia? Is it something that is of belief that it is actually truth that they're speaking? Or is it something that resonates with what we term, I suppose these days, your truth? You know, and we have to be critical and analytical of these things. And as you said, ingest this information in a way that we put it all together and we understand. The problem is nowadays, it's not just taking, say, 5 news sources. We now have to then delve beyond that. Like, you know, example, the Nigel Farage thing and the GB News guy making some millions short in NatWest on the stock market. And there's levels to this shit now of complexity that if you have not in any field or capacity jumped off that cliff and are aware of the Dunning-Kruger effect, you are just bombarding yourself, sensatorily overloading yourself with opinion and op-ed rather than not in the cold nature of academic fact, but somewhere in the middle of going, well, I'm being honest. Here's my truth. Here's my thing. Here's this what I believe, the evidence, what we found or whatever, and correlating in a big pile. That's now our responsibility at home. We have to digest this shit. I mean, I was laughing. I was talking to my mother the other day, and I was saying about memes, because I was saying I'm in a Simpsons group, as many of my listeners probably will be, on Facebook and elsewhere. And there's a Simpsons meme where when a celebrity dies, their head goes into the clouds with Homer sat on his car. And that's where I find out how celebrities have died now. Literally, it's just a quick scroll on Facebook, go on the Simpsons group, and like, oh, God, they died. Jump on over to Google or wherever. You then do a little bit of research, jump through a few different outlets, and then you correlate an opinion after the fact. But we've now morphed to, because of the complexity of the end point of media, memes, that it's distilling and cramming all of this into here, boom, and somehow we look at it and go, I understand that. It's this new modern language, in the same way you're a similar age to myself, of like, do you remember, what do we call it? The tap text on phone.
I was just talking about this the other day.
I was so good at it. You could finish it and you know exactly how many characters you have to the end before you text it, and then you literally type it, put your phone down, and your phone would have to catch up.
Yeah.
But it was just mad. It was just like 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, Smith. It was just so insatiable.
I remember at the time, though, I just going back, because before we move on to different topics, you said 2 words there, which I think wraps up that little segment perfectly. You said, my truth. And I think if we start everything with, look, people, this is my truth from my perspective. I'm 35, so I've got 35 years of my truth leading to this very moment in time. All the stuff I've read, the people I've met, the things I've done have led to my truth. It means I believe this to be true. It might not necessarily be right, and everybody should just get to their truth and what, because everyone's got different perspectives based on completely different lives. So I think that was great. Those 2 words is the most important part. That is, what is my truth? And then moving on to the text messages you've just said, I remember when it's great growing up as well and living through getting experience, because when you're 20, you're like, you're at the top of the first hill, aren't you? And I can feel myself in life experience getting down that first slope. And I think what I'm getting to is, when we used to text, and it was, hi, I'm going, GNG, like 3 letters per word. Yeah. I remember my parents, the people older, going, oh my goodness, literacy has gone out the window. We're all going to be fools in 20 years, all talking text talk. And there was a big thing about, we're not going to know how to spell anymore because we're all texting. Give us modern phones and look, when was the last time you saw text talk?
Well, it's predictive text. I mean, that's what kind of changed it. So it's an interesting one. It's another one of those things we see time and time again. I'm probably going to rub some people up the wrong way by saying this, but I recently read...
That's not what you do, Simpa.
No, yeah, maybe in a slightly different way. But I recently read Aaron Bastani's book, Fully Automated Luxury Communism. And fascinating read. And the way he's talking about, like, the problems arrive at a point where disruptive technology arrives. And basically we have such a thing where, say, for example, in the 1800s, he discusses a writer, a journalist basically points out this whole thing, and they do some calculations and say that, in the next 20 years, London is going to be under 9 feet of horse shit because of the advancement of technology and carts and all this other thing. And literally, cut to the time later, the automobile, the combustion engine is basically perfected as much as it could be, sort of standardized, and cars start to take over. So horses then get replaced. So you go from 50,000 horses in London to fucking no horses. Then you got cars and you get a new problem. And then so there's this problem of emissions and everything else. And then our technology seems to just be keeping pace ahead of our necessity. So we arrive at a precipice of a problem, and then the technology arises out of necessity. And then we integrate that technology, and then obviously we create more problems and have to solve that problem. And that seems to be the ever-arcing learning curve of human experience.
I think you've said where my conversation's going, I think segued nicely into what we talk about with regards to happiness, because what we've just spoke about makes it potentially makes people feel hopeless. And then we've got, whether you believe it or you don't believe it, I'm not interested, because the environmental impact of that humans are or are not having. My whole point on that is, and the reason I'm not interested whether you believe in climate change or not, is because if you don't believe in climate change, do you think polluting less is better for people? Yes. Do you think emitting less greenhouse gases is better than emitting loads of greenhouse gases? Yes. All these things that they want for climate change, if people say there's no climate change, then, well, it doesn't really matter, because the things that they're asking us to do, drive less, walk more, take the train, it's just better for health. It's better for emissions and breathing, the air quality. It's just better. So that's why I make that potentially a bit of a harsh statement where I don't care what people think. It's better if we do move forward. And with climate change, and like you said about technology, there does always seem to be, like, there's no better motivation than being on the edge of a cliff. When you've got no option but to innovate, then you innovate. And again, I would never get into whether COVID was real or whether it wasn't, but people were in beds on ventilators, and James Dyson created a ventilator that worked on less electricity and cleaned the air better, because according to him, it was a necessity, and he got it done, and it worked. And so that's where my hope comes from, is like, we will. Whether the European countries are going through mass heat waves now, and it's horrible, and there have been deaths and our wildfires, but we will find a solution. I am 100% confident.
Most of the solutions exist today, or they're in the infancy of their production. One of the reasons that I read Aaron's book is I wanted to understand Navara Media, which is the company that he started as an independent media. They're quite a strong organization these days. How such a thing could be achieved without ending prohibition, without the deliberate wasting of resource. That this cannot technologically be solved. They get better at detecting, say, cocaine in airports, but cocaine use is still going through the roof. You know what I mean? They can detect it on a banknote, in your piss, in the rivers, but cocaine is still as prevalent as ever. The war on drugs won't work. We're going to pour infinite resources into ever-dwindling results. And cannabis being a ubiquitous resource in terms of, if you look at what some people call so-called hemp, or the non-narcotic, non-consumable aspects of the plant. And so I want to obviously have these kind of conversations. But what he talks about kind of within that is this rise of these technologies, these disruptive technologies, so like free energy. And we're arriving at a point through automation where, again, he tells an anecdote in the book of the head of the automotive union in America and Henry Ford Jr. And allegedly it's reported on in a newspaper, but historically we don't know if it actually happened or whether it was just used as kind of a way to articulate something of the times. And basically what happened is Henry Ford Jr. said to this union leader when walking past his new automated machines, how will these machines pay your membership dues? And without skipping a beat, the automotive guy, union guy replied, well, how will they buy your cars? Do you know what I mean? Is that we're moving to a point where we're having to drive ourselves towards this luxury communism, as Aaron Bastani pitches it, where he separates quite eloquently, historic examples of socialism. So you can, obviously, we can get more controversial than he did in the book and whatever. And you've got nationalist socialism. So you got Nazis sort of on one side. You've obviously got what we think of traditionally as communists with Stalin, Lenin, etc., and what rose out of the USSR and everything there, and the experiments in Cuba, North Korea, China, etc. None of these are true communism, because communism has to exist in a period of affluence. Capitalism exists by creating artificial scarcity. But when ever more abundance is flowing at the seams, how do we restrain this? And this is what we're seeing now with billionaires, the verge of trillionaires, and the next thing is we can't free that system because it changes the construct of society. And with the whole climate change argument is, yes, the technologies are rising, but where's the profit? So it's not just, if the problem is that then those are creating disruption from the grassroots level all the way up. Shell are now paying influencers and whatever else to do fucking soft promo and shit for them. And they're trying to disrupt the youth movements predominantly, and seem to be at the front of this. Obviously, you've got campaigns like Just Stop Oil and whatever, and I don't necessarily agree with their tactics. But in terms of what the kind of end goals are, I think we need to have that discussion. But when it's forced upon the individual person, when it's belief, I think it's different. So yeah, there should be the thing that I believe this, you believe this, but then the third thing is based on something beyond belief. And that's where we're stuck now, is that everybody believes their opinion has equal validity to science. And don't trust the science and all that shit that came out of COVID. That's not what I'm fucking saying. Again, I'm also going to avoid that whole thing. That's a conversation we'll leave over here. Yeah. But my point being that consensus academia, we had this rich history stretching back to the fucking ancient Greeks of shared intellectualism. Yeah, there was hierarchies of structure and slavery and abuse and all the other shits that, again, park that here. But the conceptual idea of that intellectual pursuit and evolution, that seems to be dissipating now. So nobody trusts anything. And I sit here as what I believe to be a rational human, but as soon as anybody says anything, my first thing is go full of shit. I can't help it. It's just everything has got so fucked up. And I think that distrust inherently of the establishment, of the system, of the governing elite, as it were. You know, even if you look in this country, 1,000 years removed, the majority of asset is still within Norman heritage. Yeah. It's an insanity. So you think then how we're still dealing with the fucking gentrification of 1,000 years ago? How the fuck do you expect to deal with what's happening now? And so it's consensus, I think, needs to be found in the climate thing, and that requires honest conversations. But when Shell are pumping tens of millions into fucking Facebook and whatever, then you can see why people have these counter narratives and GB News and Talk Radio or whatever, and all these other things jump on it. And some points have validity, but those questions have to be asked in that kind of neutral setting where the intellectual pursuit is the outcome, not, oh, my political side wins and your political side is losers.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would say to some of that would be, the reason I don't get into the COVID argument and the climate change argument and what do they call them? Conspiracy theories is because I love those people. I love the people who said that COVID wasn't real, because I believe that we should challenge everything. When I say I love them, I'm not saying it's my opinion. What I'm saying is I would never talk down to those people or say that they're idiots, because I love the fact that they challenge everything. Now, through my truth has been heavily based in science. So I fully believe in science as a methodology to get to the best stance that we've currently got. And I love the way Dara O'Brien puts it when people go, oh, scientists think they know everything. Dara O'Brien goes, no, they don't. If scientists thought they knew everything, they would stop. But they don't, because they know they don't know everything. And they continue trying to do test after test, even with, this sort of leads me on to why I stopped doing nutrition. And goes back to your point, even when people who follow the scientific method and 99% certain, they're still doing another test. They're still going, let's make this 99.1%. And then when that happens, somebody else will go, I want to challenge that. And if they get the results, it'll be 99.2% accurate. And the reason I stopped doing nutrition, and I think the thing that worries me, is that if we completely ridicule science, like I was ridiculed on Facebook, this was before Instagram came out. I used to have a page called The Nutrition Kitchen, where I put everything I learned in my master's and meta studies, and I would put out there what I knew to currently be true. Then you got this sudden surge in 2000, and I think it was 10, 11, of people doing nutrition courses. When I say sudden surge, in my industry, there was a surge of people doing 2-week nutrition courses. I spent $6,000 doing a master's. And because these nutrition courses, these nutritionists were telling people what they wanted to hear, they were getting like 20, 30, 40,000 followers on Facebook and arguing with me. And I'm like, no, that's not right. But because they were telling people what they wanted to hear, it was, they got all of the credit and the influence.
Interesting, isn't it? It's the influence has become the corrupting cachet of our generation. I don't know if cachet is the right word. Tool, totem, item. Yeah. And whereas previously it was capital, as in cash. So again, back in the, without making too many assumptions, obviously, I'm not condoning history or anything that went on, but let's take everything as it is as we step back toward it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, go back a couple hundred years in the pursuit of basically like cutting cadavers open and whatever else, and learning about the kind of the human body and whatever else, led through a pursuit of, again, it was intellectualism. So it was the best minds would kind of get together. Granted, there was a certain elitism, there was a certain classism that pervaded of the time. So it was filtered information, but still there was dissent and there was conversation. If some people disagreed, they would then seek to prove their arguments. And that made the whole consensus stronger. Is rather than people attacking others' ideas, they questioned them, but then would then take their own the scientific method, the neutral method, as it were, of exploration of peer review, etc. Or peer review came on many years later in terms of study by study. But what I mean by this is doing a thing within the rules that were set kind of as the gentlemanly thing before it was kind of codified. And then you took your studies and your things back and you went, well, we think this and this and this. And you can, and through that, a vast evolution occurred. But then once the pharmaceutical conglomerates, these giants like Bayer, you got to remember Bayer, produced heroin. That was a trademarked fucking drug that they produced and used to sell in the back of, what is it, Sears catalog in America. Used to be able to buy a heroin with 2 hypodermic needles in a nice little carry case. So you can put it in your pocket when you go out. And
know that.
Different world, man. I've done such a deep dive into the history of opioids as part of a video I was meant to finish last year, but I'm still procrastinating and trying to get around to finishing. But my point being is that then got greatly corrupted, which could lead to obviously certain controversial conversations about COVID, which is, I think, where the distrust is. We saw obviously with the SSRI scandal, not too recent, where a lot of the data and interpretations of that seems to be allegedly fabrications. And so this is then same thing that happened with kind of Ritalin and ADHD and various of the different drugs. When you go back to thrombide or thrombide, I can't remember what the hell it was. They give to pregnant women and off-label, even whether it was on-label.
Was it
mutations? Thalidomide, that's the one. I couldn't get me letters together there. But yeah, so there's all these different sort of things. And you look at, again, companies like Pfizer, the largest single fined corporation in human history for various scandals and all. So people have that distrust. And so the method got corrupted. So as we're seeing now, I was literally just watching a conclusion of something that happened at Stanford University, and one of the neurologist professors there, and basically allegations that are coming out of fabricated work. There's something that happened obviously with Parkinson's not too long ago, and basically a whole pursuit with tens of millions of dollars was abandoned because of the fabrications of the paper, because allegedly the individuals involved obviously knew the potential money they could make from it. So if you fudge a few bits, you can get obviously all the funding and live that lavish lifestyle and do whatever you want with it, kind of thing. Obviously you can't, there's restraints and whatever, but obviously everything's corruptible. And so I think we're now at a point where science and the traditional idea of the pursuit of education doesn't get you into the same place. That's now just a class bridge, especially in this country. You can go to uni and maybe get closer to that middle class if you're lower class. Or if you're middle class, you can get you can get the illusion, the taste of the dregs of the upper class. Do you know what I mean? And it's that game, whereas it used to be the pursuit of knowledge, now it's the pursuit of just money, because the acceleration of the financial mechanisms mean that there's not the breathing space we had in previous generations. They don't want us to stop and question the systems around us and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like Rupert Sheldrake does, in one of his books, and he's like, what if all science is wrong? He's a scientist, and he basically just postulates this idea. What if, and I think he goes through 10 different things, and he goes, what if these things are off? Because everything was based on what came before it. So basically the concepts of today are still 500, 600, 700 year old, even though we've tweaked and refined them to fit what we think is the narrative of knowledge that came so long ago, but we hold in such high regard. And like I said, I think the same is happening with this social credit, that you got big numbers. That's the same as being an esteemed academic. It doesn't matter, call it the Joe Rogan effect if you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You mentioned the pharmaceutical companies. You can go back further. The pharmaceutical companies of the past were the religious institutions. So Galileo couldn't publish his works because he would have been killed by, I think, maybe the Catholic Church.
He was a heretic.
Yeah, because the world is round. Die.
I think it was the world is round and revolves around the sun, not that the sun revolved around the earth. And it was basically, it was heresy, because Well, no. God made us. We're the thing in the middle. That's just a thing that keeps us warm and whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And so it's always been there. And then, like you said, the pursuit of education, the pursuit of knowledge. Now the scientific institutions are now have been governmentized. I'm going to make up a word there, where people don't trust them. But if you knew science, you would trust it because you'd know how to read articles and go, well, here's the statistical data. It doesn't matter what they're telling me in the conclusions. I've got the statistics here. All right. And being able to do statistical analysis is one of the most boring things you can do. But also, if you can learn it and understand it, you can understand. It doesn't matter what people say. If you've got real data, you can make your own conclusions. And then you're absolutely right. Moving on to these influencers now, is they have now got the political currency or the influential currency. You've got Conor McGregor with 40 million subscribers, followers, him saying, this drink is the best drink in the world. Okay, now you're going to have 1 million people buying that drink because he said so, because Conor McGregor said this is the best drink. Not because scientists have said it, because Conor McGregor said it. But being in a media industry, I also now I'm starting to see the distrust of the influencer. So people, this is what makes humanity brilliant: is you can't hoodwink us for too long. Yep. We will find out, and the influencer thing is being found out. Why are you telling me this information? Is it because you've just been paid £1 million by this company to tell me to tell this information? Okay, so I don't trust you anymore. I need to go and find my sources of information from somewhere else, which might be micro-influencers, somebody who's only got 2,000 followers, who's not going to get paid, but will tell you the right information from their truth. So I am starting to see the lack of the beginning of the end for influencers, or big influencers.
It's like an allergic reaction almost to advertising, to the means by which capital sells us their goods and services. And at a time of affluence, when people have money, we're more likely to succumb to it. But when it's then targeted, I mean, like, we'll get onto this in a little bit with another segment, but say, for example, I like Formula One. I in no way can afford Sky. So allegedly, potentially, maybe, I would happen to find it on other sources. And the other sources, allegedly, if I were to potentially find them, come with the adverts that are associated to that. And I see this different level of like, who the fuck can afford that? I mean, it's like, and then I go, oh, what I'm watching, it's contextual. And I think what we're seeing with the way that the algorithms and everything are working is it's pushing everything into this ever limited illusory luxury, as we were saying, that it's always just, damn it, I need to do 50 hours this week and I'll get it. Ah, shit, maybe 60 hours. Do you know what I mean? It's always just lifted out of our reach.
I love this topic of conversation. If you want to push it back a little bit, I'm happy to. But once we get into talking about this, it's going to go off, isn't it? So, do you want to push it back, or are you happy to?
Oh no, let's
segue into it.
Let's segue. We're doing pretty well. I mean, obviously, I got re-diagnosed with ADHD the other year, so you should probably tell them a little bit. But I think we're doing well here. We're doing well here. Excellent. So yeah, let's jump in it.
So with that, you say a few things. You know, the only thing is you say 3 or 4 things. I'm like, yeah, and then I'm like,
one thing triggers another thing.
Yeah, exactly. What did he go back and say there? So you've mentioned luxury and always being out of reach. I love having the conversations with people that basically start off with let's go back a bit further. One of the things that really opened up my mind, and I love doing it with people, is ask why 5 times. If you want to know your inner truth, ask yourself, or get somebody to ask you why 5 times. So if that sports car is what you want to achieve, and that's what you've got to work the extra 50 hours to just get to it, then why do you want a sports car? Because it makes me feel good. Why does it make you feel good? Because I like the sound of the engine, and when I'm in it, I like to go fast. Why? I like the thrill of like being out on the streets and in a brand new red Lamborghini. Why? Well, and then most of the time it just makes me feel good. Why? Because people are seeing me in this Lamborghini and that makes me feel good. Okay, so it's the opinion, and that's why we do it. And sometimes it takes more than 5 hours. Sometimes you get there quicker, but I find that people buy stuff to impress other people most of the time.
It's that Fight Club quote: "We buy shit we don't need to impress people we don't like."
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that was from Fight Club. I've heard somebody say that before. That nails this whole conversation. That is it in a nutshell. And I feel a bit smug because I feel like I'm entitled to be smug. But I see this pursuit of knowledge, which I love. I love reading books because I like having conversations with people. I like reading books to have conversations. And if I'm brutally honest, it's because I like to come across as though I know a little bit about everything, because I like conversations, I like people. I love talking. And if I can know a little bit about what interests you, then we can have a really good conversation. That's where my love of book reading comes from. And then, so the pursuit of knowledge, then the pursuit of happiness is sort of, that's what I want everyone to know. Sometimes we've talked about a few things that makes people a bit down and dreary, and the state of the planet and politics and this and that. I feel a little bit smug with myself because, as we said in the sort of the preamble, I suffer with I believe it's called high performance anxiety or something like that, which means I've suffered with anxiety, but the type of anxiety I get actually helps me perform in my business. So I get real bad anxiety about missing a deadline, so I will never miss a deadline. I happen to keep my clients happy because they're happy that we've hit every time given. It gives me mass anxiety. But I'm not saying like that as a woe me story. Everybody deals with anxiety at different levels. I've suffered with anxiety. I have the stress of running a business. I have the stress of people and looking after people in the business. But I feel like I'm happy. Well, I am happy. And that comes down to something called expectations. And I love talking to people about this as well, because it was a big light bulb moment for me, and I want to pass it on as much as possible to other people. An expectation, which is, how do you feel when you go to the beach?
Oh, you're asking me this? Sorry, I thought it was rhetorical.
Yeah. How do you feel when you go to the beach?
I go to the beach quite often. I feel usually pretty wound up because I go to sea and beach to collect sea glass as a way to hyper focus, to deal with frustration, usually of being sat in this seat and writing or researching or doing work. But generally, I suppose, with an expectation to feel better when I leave, I guess.
Okay. How do you feel when you climb a mountain?
Fucking knackered, but invigorated. Do you know what I mean? Like powerful, accomplished, achieved. Yeah.
How do you feel when you go to a lake and you feel the wind going through your hair and the gentle lapping of the water? In a nutshell, we should all be feeling happy when we go to these natural places, where it's the beach or it's the woods or it's a mountain or it's a lake or it's a river. We feel happy. And the reason for that is because nature never changes. We know exactly what we're going to get on the top of a mountain. When we go to the beach, the waves, the same thing. Every time we go to the beach, if it's a warm day, the sand is warm. It acts exactly like we want it to act. We get to the top of a mountain, it's knackering, but we know the sights are going to be amazing, and they are. And nature and expectations match perfectly. So we're happy. So if your expectation is to have a £500 million yacht, like we were talking about before, you're probably never going to be happy, because that £500 million yacht is dedicated to 0.0001% of people on this planet. So I learned to just be happy with what I've got, not expect that I'm going to be able to drive a lovely car, or I can afford a nice watch, or I can do these luxury things that they want you to attain or try and achieve for. I'm going to try to get them, but that's the journey. I'm going to enjoy the journey of trying to get there. If I don't get there, it is what it is. But it's the expectation of people thinking, I deserve this. I should have this. This is my expectation. I believe currently, this is my truth, I believe that's where unhappiness and depression comes from. And again, I'm not making I am making broad strokes here, but people's expectations If they're not matched, they're unhappy. If they exceed the expectations, they're happy. And I think that's the whole point of life, is be happy and make other people happy.
You're arriving suspiciously close. I don't know if it's suspicious as in of what you've said, but to sort of Buddhist philosophy, and the attachment is the root of suffering. And obviously Buddhists, in some of my opinion, I guess, can go a bit far in terms of the rejection of the material world, etc. I think there is a balance to be found. I think when you were speaking there, there's a scale in all of us, and expectation is one side of it, and our kind of rational view of reality is on the other. And so if you are not present and you never take the time to understand from the moment you wake to the moment you sleep, that is one unique experience. You'll go to rest, and especially as men, our hormones reset after 24 hours. You're a different person effectively. It's you're moving forward through time and space. And if your expectation on the scale of that is outweighed, you can never have that balance within. And it's that balance that gives you insight. And that's where I think kind of wisdom comes from, in the sense of humility arises also, I think, from the same mechanism, that you can like these things, you can maybe even want these things, but they are not upholding. You are not upholding to them. They are just, it's, all right, here's my life journey. And if one of them things comes across my journey, nice, cool. And that's what you kind of go for. But you keep yourself grounded each day to recognize it's not linear. It is, in the sense that it's directional, as in you're moving from birth to death. But at any point, you can veer off violently to the left or to the right to a whole new experience, whole new existence and way of being. And that is, again, that rational expectation. Whereas I think so many people, I think of the meme again, because my brain works in memes. I think it's two panels, and it's somebody drowning. It's a woman praying for God, and then a boat rides up. And then a boat rides up with a life ring. And she goes, no, I'm fine. God's going to get me. And then she drowns. It's like, well, no, that was the thing. And it's just identifying those things along the way. And that requires humility and kind of balancing, I guess, your competency versus, your confidence in that way. And this is where I think the social media has fucked us and blown that scale way out of proportion, is the more confident you are, the competency doesn't seem to matter anymore. And so we're just all listening to whoever's loudest and seems most, not even articulate anymore, just... loudest, I guess.
most compelling, isn't it?
Most passionate.
And the reason I want to go back to the depression statements I made, because I want to just clarify that so people don't get angry that I've just said, oh, you're depressed because you expected too much. No, that's not what I'm saying. And to sort of put a story behind that, Tyson Fury, he's openly admitted that the reason he went into clinical depression after he'd won the world titles, he was a millionaire, he had everything in life that he wanted, he'd achieved everything that he wanted, and then he became clinically depressed because he thought the way he would feel after winning the world titles and achieving everything he achieved, he thought he would feel differently. His expectation of how that would feel was very different to what he actually felt. And that's why he went into hit for him. That's why he became depressed, because it was like, I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. This doesn't feel like I wanted it to feel. And the only thing I can say where I've got sort of, I can potentially see that is when we did our GCSEs or when we did our A-levels, and we're all thinking, when I finish this last exam, it's going to be the best day ever. And then you finish your last exam and you're walking home with all your mates and you're all like, yeah, you're talking about what you got wrong and what you got right. And then you get home, there's no more revision to do. And you're like, what do I do now? I'm not revising. I can go and play footy later, I suppose. I can play on my Xbox. But then it just didn't feel as good as I expected it to feel. It was a bit, last exam done, that's it. So that's the only way I can explain it, is I expected to feel glorious, like, yes, get home. And it just wasn't like that at all. And so that's where I'm sort of coming from. And now when I had that sort of realization, which is listen to podcasts, reading books, listen to different people, I'm now sort of more in tune with, I try and really tune in on when I feel happy, which is my little lad playing out in the backyard at 9:30 on night on his trampoline, and he's playing with the kids over the other side as well, because they're all off on summer holidays. And when a kid laughs genuine, happy laughter, if I was going in to get him to come to bed because it was 9:30, and I thought, you know what, summer, I'm leaving him out there. And he was just laughing his head off, having the time of his life on a trampoline. No Xbox, no phone, talking to another child his own age on his trampoline, having the time of his life. And that made me happy. Do you know what I mean? And it's just being in tune with what makes you happy and what gets you down. Try and do less of what gets you down. Try and do more of what makes you happy. And it's going to be different for everyone. But for me personally, a fancy car will not make me happy. It will make my life a bit more comfortable. Probably make people's perceptions of me, make me look as though I'm more successful than probably what I actually am. The nice watch, my phone tells the time. A watch is a watch. It really, if it truly makes you feel good to have the Breitling or the Rolex or whatever you've got on your wrist, it truly makes you feel good, and nobody else gets to see it, then that's great. Go and get yourself a watch. But if your happiness is based on your watch being seen by other people and their opinion of you is based on your watch, you will be unhappy. And that's the current position I'm in at the moment.
I think that's entirely true and speaks to what would be, I guess, a universal truth. Is that, again, what do the Buddhists say? 3 things can't long be hidden: the moon, the sun, and the truth. And so the truth in this sense is that stuff will not make you any happier. I remember this so vividly because of like an acid flashback of when I watched this documentary, and it was a real weird like eclectic one from back in the day. I think it was actually by the director of Dumb and Dumber, maybe, and he did Ace Ventura as well. And he had like a traumatic brain injury, and it caused him like reoccurring pain and stuff. And he got a bit suicidal and thought, if I'm going to kill myself, like, what's the message I want to give the world? And he went out and he basically met all these people. And one of the people he met is kind of I think he's like a Christian theologist called Tom Hartman. And he describes like the capitalist illusion and the thing that we're all laboring under. And he says, imagine yourself alone, naked in the woods, and it's raining. If somebody came and offered you shelter, clothing, food, and warmth, you go from being fucking miserable to being very happy with very little resource. That's the truth. The lie is then if a few of these things will make you this happy, then X amount will make you X happy. And so you forever timesing your own, I mean, my mate call it leveling up. So if you get the fancy car, yeah, it's all well and good, mate, but your insurance is going to go up. If you crash that fucking thing, the parts are going to cost you a fucking fortune. You're forever going to be scared of where you park it, what you do with the anxiety and the worry of it. And you end up leveling up. And I think we're in a point where, because people want the facade or the illusion in their own mind of people thinking they're doing well because they've rented a load of fucking cars and watches, whatever other shit for the gram and for Snapchat, that's actually going to give them any currency, any real value or meaning. And it's illusory. It's look, tap it for a moment, but it's like chasing the dragon. You're never really going to get to the high that you believe that you deserve unless you fully delude yourself. And obviously there's a lot of sociopaths out there and people that arrive at that point. And I think that could speak to some high level influences out there in the world. But I think generally the average person is now aware of that trap. They're aware of this thing and go, no, my necessity is the warmth. It's I've got a house, and I think the market need ultimately has driven us down to that. So the majority of the populace are just making ends meet, surviving post-COVID and lockdowns in the state of, especially this economy in this country post-Brexit. But then opposite to this is this thin level of luxury, of hyper luxury, of Bugattis driving around fucking UK roads, a number of Lamborghinis and Ferraris and shit I see on the motorways. And yet millions of kids, like, 4.5 million kids are in poverty. Yeah. And there's all these, I could rattle off statistics or whatever, but it's just this, the balancing on that. And I think most of us look at that and intrinsically, whether you believe yourself to be a capitalist wanting to be a billionaire one day or whatever you attribute yourself to be politically on the spectrum, you still are aware of this lie. And so when you see these influencers or these adverts or whatever, the reason they're playing harder with nostalgia and weaponizing music and these other cues visually to get us to fall into this thing is because otherwise we recognize what it is. And it's bullshit. It's
complete bullshit.
Yeah, I think sorry, I was just going to say about the Bill Hicks thing. There's a Bill Hicks in one of his stand-ups And he stops kind of midway through what he's going. Is there anybody in here from advertising and marketing? And somebody goes, woo, and he goes, fucking kill yourself. And the crowd goes, and he goes, no, fucking kill yourself. And he just launches into this tirade about how it's like the worst thing, and it's just like it's on point. It's on point.
It is. I own a media agency, and the marketing is the worst thing. And if you write it down, I'd love to come back to it because I feel like I've got an answer to that. But we'll come back to like the media ethos that I've got, and I would feel like I've turned it on its head. But let's come back to that. So pivoting back to luxury goods, I know that some people say to me, yeah, but the watch and the car does make me feel good because I like it. It makes me feel good and happy when other people are impressed by what I've got. That makes me happy. And me sort of, I don't have a response at the time when they say it to me, but then you think about it and you go, but what if, so if I've got a Range Rover and I've got a £5,000 Rolex watch, and I've got the most expensive car, the most expensive watch in the room, and everyone's really impressed by me, and that makes me happy, great. Not long before the next person walks in who's got the Range Rover Overfinch, better car, and they've got the £10,000 Rolex Blue Oyster face. Now, no one's bothered about the car that you drive or the watch that you've got because look who's just walked in, Billy Big Bollocks, who's got the better car and the better watch. So now you're no longer happy because now you've got to have a better watch than him and a better car than him to get the attention back on you to be happy. And that's the point. I'm not saying that watches and cars and big houses don't make people happy. I'm saying there is always somebody with more than you. And if your happiness is based on other people's opinion of you, you're eventually going to be unhappy. My happiness, and I love being, I'm a parent, I've got 2 kids, and I feel like it's my superpower. It's the hardest job in the world, but I've become happy since I've had kids because it's the simple things in life and it's experiences. Listening to my child laugh makes me incredibly happy, and nobody can take that away from me. Touch wood. If my child is sick, that could take something away from me. And if your children are sick, that's why wish for health and happiness for your kids and your loved ones. Because when they are healthy and happy, everything else is secondary. You can deal with everything else. You can deal with a lost client or a pulled budget or whatever you deal with in your life. As long as your loved ones are happy and healthy, I believe you can deal with anything in life. And that's for me is happiness.
I think those two are almost on a spectrum, in that if you ramp it up too much of one way, if you are so lost in what you believe people's opinions of you to be, how can you truly love somebody and be truly loved? And ultimately, times change. I've met a lot of people in this space. I've met people that at times were running, £50 million companies, annual turnover or whatever, that are now living an incredibly more humble life. And people along the spectrum of whatever else, and these things change. You may be doing well today, but if that is what you pin your personality to, same with social media numbers, that if you think your follower count actually is anything attributable to who you are, you have to constantly, I believe that people should listen to that instinct that I believe we all have to want to better ourselves, to want to be better today than you were yesterday, to, in a kind of weird way, maybe it's me just being hypercritical, I always want to deal with the mistakes of yesterday. For no matter how good I seek to be tomorrow, the day after I'll be like, you twat, why did you do that? And it's having that recognition and consciousness and humility that allows you to then grow from these things. And whether it be a setback or a tragedy or whatever, none of these things matter if you trust yourself. There's an old, I think it's maybe it's an English proverb, I don't know, of a bird on a branch, and something I bring up often, like the bird sat on the tree doesn't fear the branch breaking because it trusts its wings. And so that is the same. It is true that if you look after your body, I mean this physically, mentally, socially, you understand how to interact with people, who you are, and how to be you authentically, because that's what you'll be rewarded most for.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that, be you authentically, because you're the only person on this planet who can be you authentically. Everyone else should be a copy. I love Gary Vee. I take a lot of inspiration from the way he does things, but I don't try and be Gary Vee because there's only one. And I know a lot of people are copying him, and the same with YouTubers and the copycats. There's only, you can be you. And I like that. just be. It's the only person you should be. And
yeah.
Live your life as best as you can. Like I'm in a. I never used to be like this. Never used to be philosophical.
Yeah.
But it's just literally over the last 6 months. Like I say, I do feel smug that I feel like I've found the key to happiness for me, and that's the point. Is what makes me happy will not make probably most of the people listening happy.
Yeah. There is almost a blueprint to it, though, in terms of it's that finding that awareness. It's taking stock of your life and what you have. It's cultivating gratitude, which may sound like an odd thing, but it does require cultivation, because we are fed through the black mirror in our hands, through the screens that we live our lives on, through the technology that we work at, a filtered version of kind of reality. And we have to do our best to ground ourselves as often as possible in what is reality. And to the point from before, I always think of the Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself, everybody else is taken.
Yeah.
It is just, there is nothing else that you can be other than you. So if you truly understand this, you cannot fail. For there are no failures. I mean, people out there, you read a lot, guys, read some more biographies. Even people you don't necessarily think of worth or value of interest, just read the human journey. And it's the same fucking thing. It's as Joseph Campbell described, like the hero's journey. You can see the evolution of people, and when they think they're at their lowest, they're actually aligned for their best next thing. And you start to understand the human experience is a bit more universal, and you can trust in yourself and have that confidence that is arose from a certainty and a surety, not from an illusion that you want to put on a facade to feed your own ego.
Yeah. 2 things. My favourite book, you just mentioned books, my favourite book is by Bill Bryson, A Brief History of Everything. And that is from the Big Bang to 2010, I think. It's literally a brief history of literally everything, and that's gone. And that is, I've read it twice, I've listened to it once. It's probably due for a reread soon. It is, honestly, it felt like it gave me a brief history of everything. I understood a tiny amount of everything that's ever happened in the world. So that is my favourite book. And then just going back to sort of cap off what I said, and it's a bit of social proof about luxury items, is if you don't believe me and don't believe that I'm right about luxury items, look at the most rich people on the planet. Look at Elon Musk, look at Jeff Bezos, look at Bill Gates. I know everyone hates him, but he's got billions. Look at Steve Jobs. What watches do he have? What cars do he drive? What things do they... When you... I heard this the other day as well. When you have that much money, you stop buying items because they just don't mean that much. When you have £100,000 in the bank, a £10,000 watch makes you feel great because it's like, oh, look at this I've achieved. Jeff Bezos, he doesn't really probably give a shit about £1 million watch. He's a billionaire. And when you get to that level of wealth, they stop. Their character is not personified by what they have. They're not interested in money at that point. It's just a thing to them. And if that's not proof that, like, what are we all doing it for? Why do you want to earn more money?
Well, I think you get to a point where I can afford everything, so I want nothing almost. Or what they want is so abstract. They still want to create more affluence to achieve what they want of their grandiose vision. All of them, once you get to a billionaire, you become cultist. Almost, you have more power than kings used to back in the day. You are forging the path of humanity. There's an Odd for All. He's a very contentious person. I'm just taking the quote just because it kind of feels like it's appropriate. Was what Kanye West said: "Only millionaires wear chains." Yeah, and what he meant by that is that he was obviously, there's a connotation towards slavery in the history there, but you can abstract that out to a thing of, you are still owned. You're owned by Rolex. You're wearing that watch, yeah, it's a Rolex, but it's Rolex. How many times have we just said fucking Rolex? You are getting a little taste of making these guys ever more and leading to another level that facilitates you to go, oh, I want more. The new one just came out and it's got one more diamond. And I'll trade this in and I'll work out. And you get lost in the thing. And it's fair when that's at a low level and you're pursuing a second-hand car for a couple of grand or whatever. The damage you're causing to the economy or whatever by your desire to have this thing and do whatever with it beyond necessity is very limited. But if you're then a billionaire like Jeff Bezos and you go to the fucking whatever port it was in Holland and goes, build me this fucking $500 million yacht, whatever it is, or multi-billion-dollar yacht, and then have to physically alter the city to get the fucker through. And they're on about dismantling bridges and taking apart road. It's like the resources. We created some jobs under, like, fuck off doing what though?
Yeah.
Like, what does that achieve? One dickhead gets this fucking thing, and then 30, 40 people that he gets to own because they live their home, they're addressed to this thing, and they have to travel around because for 2 weeks a year, cumulatively, he might fucking land there and go, I want X, Y, Z, and that shouldn't exist. That bottlenecking of resource at that level starves thousands.
Yeah.
It's just, in a finite economy, it's just fact. Say what you fucking want and defend capitalism all you like here. Yeah. But it's just fact that when we have these billionaires and they have this X amount of stuff, that X amount of stuff isn't spread amongst all the other people. And it's generated, without getting very Marxist here, by the labor of the masses, not by the genius, air quotes there for my listeners, of these billionaires. You know what I mean?
So for again, to go back to me smugness was, I'll tell you a little story actually. With the media company, we are very good at what we do. Obviously, I'm going to say that. But we needed an identity. We needed to niche down. And this story is relevant, I promise you. We needed to niche down and save something, but I did not know what that niche was. Could have been the luxury market, funnily enough. Could have been, we do videos and websites for the high-end watch and people who own yachts. And we could have gone, that's one niche as an example, but it doesn't get me going at all. Like, I wouldn't want to come to work for that. So I'm driving to work in a van, and I'm coming off where I live, off a roundabout onto the motorway. Very small, very, very small, actually hard shoulder, going onto a 70-mile-an-hour motorway. Woman's pulled over, and she's visibly distressed. As like I could glance her. Like, as any person, what you'd think, as most good people do, they pulled over. I pulled over. So walked up the road, and another fella's pulled over behind her as well. But I've seen in front of me before I pulled over, 40 cars drove right past, and I could also see 10 cars a second driving past. So I've gone up to the window, and she's disabled, so she's in a wheelchair, can't get out the car because the traffic's coming past so fast, and she's got a 5-year-old daughter in the car, and she's terrified. So me and this lad. And it's the story's a little bit different when I tell it in Liverpool, because this lad turned out to be a very well-known boxer called Rocky Fielding, who was just a brilliant. So I tell it a bit differently in Liverpool because they'll know who Rocky Fielding is. But he's come over, and turns out she's run out of petrol. So at the time I had a 5-year-old myself. Straight onto YouTube Kids. There you go. You okay? She was happy as Larry. The woman's still crying. We get her out the car into a wheelchair and start to calm her down. She's like, will I be in trouble? No, of course you won't. You broke down. Rocky went and got us some petrol from the Tesco's. His lad I could tell he was in a rush because his lad has his football kit on. It was a Saturday, like 8:30, he's trying to get him to football. He's gone and got a petrol. I've calmed down and chilled with her. Then whoever turns off, motorway services turn up, block off the road, make it a bit safer. Rocky turns back up, fill a car in petrol, and we go on our way, and she's over the moon. Now I get into work that day, half an hour later. Obviously, I don't post about it on social media because that's not what I do. I don't ring around people and tell them how much of a good person I am, because that's not what you're supposed to do. But in work, after about 4 or 5 hours, I was on a high, just walking around, loving life. And I've just I'm in this moment now trying to take note of when I feel good. And I just thought, I feel really good today. And it's obviously because I feel like I've done good. And that's sort of where the revolution came for where we're going with the media company now, is we do great work for great people. And it's not always the case. Sometimes we have to do work for people who just pay well because I've got bills to pay. But on the majority, I want this to be a media agency that works with people who make a positive impact on the planet, on the people on it, or the animals that inhabit it, for want of a better word. I've said it that many times, it seems like spiel now, but honestly, that's the truth. And that, for me, makes me happy. I am so happy when people love a video that we've done or a website that we've created. And you can imagine how much happier I am when that website or video or design that we've done is for a charity that reduces gun and knife crime in Liverpool, or for a suicide prevention charity that deals with ex-armed forces. And I'm at home going, I made up with that video, and it also made a fucking difference to this little group. And that is why I feel smug, because in work I found my happiness, and in life I know what makes me happy, and it's not the unattainable pursuit of that watch, that car, that house. I am happy with what I've got right now, right here. It's not a huge amount, but I am happy with what I've got, and that's pretty much me smugness in a nutshell.
No, I think you're entitled to it, man. I think you are entitled to it. Like I said, it's within all of us, and it's finding it and recognizing that it isn't something illusory. Tomorrow never comes. You wake up tomorrow and it's today. You plan for a week from now, and when it arises, it's not a week from now, it's today. There is only the ever permanent now, and the more we can draw our attention and focus to it, then I think the easier it is to find that voice inside that tells you exactly what you heard that day, what you found. And I found the same thing very early on, as I've always been an incredibly compassionate individual and would always act first. And if I see something go wrong, I'd always find myself in situations where, shit, I misread this. Someone's not in trouble. This is not a bad thing. I'm going to quietly walk away. But would often still find myself in those kind of situations. And it's in that, it's going to sound, again, corny as fuck, in service of others, I think is where I found happiness, is when I gave something, not expecting something, for purely well, I suppose there's nothing truly altruistic. I think it's a Friends thing where Joey and Phoebe end up in an argument about it.
My favourite thing to say ever. I love that because, again, there's not. I'm sorry to jump in there, but you touched on something I absolutely love, which is there is no truly selfless act because I give money to charity. It's not altruistic. It made me feel good. I did it because I knew it would make me feel good. Do I do all this work for charities because I'm such a giving person? Honestly, I do it because it makes me feel good. And it makes me feel good that it does good for others. But at the core of it, it's because it's for me. I do it for me. And it's so I say to people, the way I am is really selfish.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I've figured it out and I do it all for me. And I love that. I absolutely love that episode.
If you can align and weaponize your desires, your ego and its selfish kind of need and your hedonism with something good in the world, and in some way form that into it's not a career, what do you call it, a vocation, then you're onto a winner. If you can embody your authenticity from the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep in every aspect of your life, you're winning by any measure that is of value. You know, money is transient. It's necessary to achieve and obtain certain things and for the survival and the continuation of the species under current market capitalism. But yeah, understanding your own personal limits and boundaries and kind of being present with yourself, as we've said throughout this, it's invaluable. It is truly invaluable.
And I don't want to be too smug where it's like I've not provided value for other people. The takeaway message from what I've learned is that I was happy with honestly with everything that I had. Mm-hmm. And if I can be happy with what I've got, then surely everybody listening can be happy with what they've got. If you've got kids, it's dead simple. If you've got kids, it's super simple, because there's a hospital in Liverpool called Alder Hey. It's one of the best children's hospitals in the country. We're very lucky to have it. I drive past that quite often, and because I've got two kids, if ever, and it's happened recently, people pull retainers and they tell you they've got a big project on, and then it gets pulled, or something happens to make you stressed, and it is genuinely like really stressful. But I always go to, if if a parent could swap with me, if a parent in Alder Hay right now could swap with me and my stresses, would they do it? And the answer would be yes every time, because you would swap. If anything happened to my kids, the clients, the people who work here, anything else becomes irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. So if you've got kids, it's a morbid mindset. It is, and some people can't do it. But think of something bad happening to your kids and how you'd feel. That hasn't happened, or hopefully, touch wood, hasn't happened. So you are lucky, and you've got, like it came back, like I'll come back to the health and happiness of your loved ones. Kids, they're like the nuclear bomb because you love them unconditionally. But if you've got a partner or a mum and dad or anybody that you love, if they are happy and healthy, then you are lucky beyond belief and rich beyond belief as well.
I think it's the appreciation as well. And I think of the Søren Kierkegaard quote that, life, it can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forward. And I think it's where wisdom comes in maturity. In the older we get, the more we kind of are able to, or given the opportunity to, reflect on that which has come before us and that which we want to kind of move forward. And I think, the whole, I'm trying to think how I would describe this, sort of like in becoming a parent, it's almost shortcutting something. It's kind of in the same way of almost a psychedelic experience. It's not necessarily a shortcut to enlightenment, and not necessarily all parents will become good people because they've had kids. That is not all what I'm saying. But it gives you that opportunity to reflect. And because of it, kids are a constant presence. And what I mean by that is they drag you into the moment. You can think, oh, I'm going to go and do whatever, but no, that kid's going to come and shit on your laptop. Do you know what I mean? They're going to piss in your face. They're going to do all whatever. You're going to end up through whatever, and all the good stuff as well. You can clearly see my bias. So I don't want to. But there's all of those things that come along, and but the other relationships, the other connections in life will always require work, and we have to remember to be generous with each other. And I think this is a phrase that's becoming more common recently on social media of do not attribute to malice what is easily attributable to ignorance. And most people, it's a bit of a secret here, folks, most people don't think of you. We just don't. Nobody thinks of anybody. We try and we do briefly, but we are so absorbed within what it is to be conscious and human. So all those judgments, that vanity, it's the opposite end of that mechanism of buying the watch to be looked at. That criticism and that fear that we hold ourselves behind, it's on the same spectrum, and it's finding that balance in between of recognizing that almost neither of these things sort of matter. And I think that more and more there is this renaissance in the movement of people trying to find that truth. And I think it's kind of blowing the system apart, which leads us back to kind of your media ethos and kind of what's happening with like social media and marketing and the manipulation and kind of the molding and of people, or the attempt to put people in groups and camps, etc.
That is what I do, and that is what we do. But I don't feel bad, and you've brought me back to that point I made before, which I'm really thank you for that. That is exactly what we do. Media agencies, marketing agencies, ad companies, our job is to manipulate people to achieve an objective for a client. That's it. The reason I don't feel bad about it is I'm trying to manipulate people to donate money to a charity, to get them to subscribe to this course that takes kids off the streets that are at risk of using guns and knives. My manipulation is to try and achieve some good. But you're absolutely right, and everyone else is right that's thinking marketing is manipulation. It's marketing is to get you, a consumer, to achieve a behavior that is beneficial to that marketing agency client. And it could be a watch company. They will manipulate you to make you think that watch is the best by getting what's his name, the tennis player Djokovic. Getting Djokovic to wear a certain type of watch will make tennis enthusiasts go, I really want that watch. It is all manipulation, but I'm happy to say that because I feel I'm manipulating people to do good. And that's why I'm happy to be dead honest and open about it. And there was something else I was going to say, but my mind's running away at 100 miles an hour itself. So crack on, we can come back to it.
Yeah, no, I think, again, your honesty is refreshing in this space. I think a lot of people in your position would, argue otherwise. They would try through exactly the mechanism you demonstrated earlier of confidenceship, if that's even a word. The conmanship was probably maybe better way of phrasing, and probably what my brain was on about there. But oh crap, my brain. I've lost train of thought. No.
I'll let you have some time because I've just remembered mine. So I have some time to think. I also don't want to fall into the trap of I've come on here and dead happy and I feel like I've figured it out. I also don't want to do the social media trap, which is life's brilliant. Life is great. I've got it all figured out, it's called, and I love this word, and I'd love it to be, this is a trap I don't want people to fall into, it, toxic positivity.
Mm-hmm.
So I get up every morning and I have an ice cold shower, and then I go for a 5-mile run. Then I look after my babies. Then I eat a nutritious meal and quinoa. Then I get myself dressed, take the kids to school, go and have a lovely day in work. And then I come back home to the children and a roast dinner and just fucking toxic positivity. Because guess what? That's not fucking how life works. It's not like that. It's definitely not like that for me. And to me, just because I just thought to myself then, I feel like I'm being a bit toxic positive here. Like I've got it all figured out, and people will then feel shit that they don't have it figured out. So to counter all the good shit that's going on in my life, I am also, the bad thing is I work a lot, and it has its pressures and strains on my partner who I've been with for 14 years. And I probably don't spend enough, or I should spend more time with my children. I get home and I'm addicted to this. That is an addiction. I sometimes don't pay attention to Isaac, my 7-year-old, and Alice, my 1-year-old, because a little ring will come up and I think, oh, is this to do with a client or is this to do with business? And I am addicted, not to the phone, but I'm addicted to my business and work. And that puts, you can imagine the stresses and strains that puts on a relationship when my 7-year-old doesn't give a fuck how much I earn or how well the business is doing or how much great work I'm doing for a charity. He cares that I'm not giving him as much attention as he deserves, which is every second of my attention should be directed towards him and the little one. So I just wanted to get that in there because it's not all fucking sunshine and rainbows. I haven't got it all figured out. I work too much, and it has its negative effects on the family.
No, I think that's fair, and again, that kind of underlines the point I was making previously about the refreshing nature of kind of your answers and the way that you've responded, and again the exhibition of authenticity and the rawness of it. Again, I think that's really important for people to be able to own their shit, to be able to stand in it. And I think there's an interesting kind of thing that you mentioned there of toxic positivity on social media. I think it's exactly the same mechanism as buying the watch. But it's cashless, and this is what I meant by that. It becoming the new credit, as it were. And if you can build up, ironically, you need real world physical or fiat currency to then be able to buy like bot farms, etc. There's a better way of saying that. Everyone knows what a bot farm is, right? It just sounded really weird in my head there. It sounded sexual. I'm like, wait. But yeah, or just artificially inflating your numbers, buying various things and whatever else. And obviously there's a certain fair game to that, but you can obviously artificially trick the systems. And then that gives you that level of faux influence that then becomes self-replicating. And I think that's the next illusion. So we've all understood, or mostly understood, how the economics work, and we've lived through enough, like the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble, the 2008 market crash, all these different things. But this new economy is still very difficult for us to understand. And things like TikTok and whatever else, as you were saying, like when Instagram first came on the scene before Facebook or now Meta got involved, was this unique space. And obviously there's things like Threads and various of the Twitter alternative, X alternative. Fucking hell. Actually, I wanted to ask your opinion about that as a marketeer and individual in a minute. The point is that how do we decondition ourselves? Because it's the same thing you say in the ring. It's Pavlovian conditioning. We've understood this psychologically and anthropologically for a century now of how to condition reactions in humans. And for all we can turn off our notifications, mute things, and this is probably why I miss so many messages, is I've just turned everything off because I have to reduce the stimuli because it is so habitual. And then if I open it and I'll go to the one thing that I'm supposed to look at. 25 things later in an hour, crap, put my phone down, pick it up. I'll look at the one thing. And you just get, it's so easy. I think because of the power of this technology and the dopamine feedback and everything else, at this point, we have to, as you say, stay grounded and find other things to appreciate and not wanting to brag on social media, whether it be the humble brag, as we call it these days, or whatever. You're still in some way doing that for you. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying no one should post. My relationship with social media is very complicated. I covered that last week with Matt, having worked at Facebook. And it becomes a very difficult place to be authentic. You try, but you self-censor, you edit, you're aware of how, certain things will trend or whatever, and it becomes difficult to really be you in a digital space.
Yeah, currently, and again, I don't have the answers, I don't pretend to have the answers, but my current thinking is if you are aware, and I fall into all of these traps, what makes me feel better is there is thousands of psychologists that work day and night for all these companies that are tuning their algorithms and their dings and their pops to make our brain go, "Ooh, something new." And I have to silence my phone. I'm in the same trap. I'm starting to miss a few important things because I have to silence it because I am like that with every ding and it's bad, but I am aware. I'm aware of it, which makes me feel better. And then just another one, just to further pull back from the toxic positivity that we started off with, is, and it comes back to being aware of why you're doing things. If you're aware of why you're doing them, it's all right. Because I am also in the trap of my car. So I, in 2015, bought a Vauxhall, I can't remember what it's called now, Zafira. If you've seen it, by the way, I'm going to say 7-seater car, it makes it sound all fancy. If you know Vauxhall Zafira, you know it's not fancy. And I loved that car. Absolutely loved it because it just didn't miss a trick. It took me family away on holidays. But when I was starting to turn up to client meetings in my brown Vauxhall Zafira, I felt as though I was being judged. My media agency was being judged based on the car that I drove, which was it's not even a dad car, it's a mum car, it's a school run car. And I was battling with myself going, no, I don't care what people think. And I carried on driving the car. And I don't know if I didn't get clients based on it or whatever. But then I thought, if I am potentially putting their wage increases at risk, because I'm like, I don't care what people think. And if there is we may be missing out on clients because of my, I don't care what car I drive. I had to sort of do something about it. Fully enough, my next door neighbour was selling his car. It was a Vauxhall Insignia, black, nice car. It's definitely not a showy car, but it blends in. Nobody takes any notice of it. They're not thinking, oh, scruffy, that car, he mustn't be doing very well. But it's also not a flash car, so I'm quite happy with that purchase that I made to the Vauxhall Insignia. So basically summarising that story that I've just told is I'm aware of I fall into these traps of being, I wonder if they think badly of me because I drive a Zafira. And I've made my decision for me and for the people who work at MPK Media just to make sure I'm not putting their wage increases or even their jobs at risk. Do you know what I mean? So just awareness is basically what I'm saying, is being aware of how you potentially are being manipulated and be in control. So I felt I was in fully control of my buying decision, which is fine. And if you're in control and you're aware, then that's it. You're fine.
Exactly. You identified what would be a common response to a situation. I mean, something I've personally experienced in this field in the past is that kind of judgment of presentation, then an assumption of your capabilities. But a lot of people would overreact. They wouldn't be conscious in that moment. They go, I'm going to go get a new, what the fuck, I don't know, like a BMW 3 Series, 5 Series, whatever on finance and like overcompensate for it. and then cause more of the problem that you were trying to alleviate, which was not putting financial burden or increasing the potential growth of your business. And it's not everything is a trap, and it isn't to say go be a Buddhist monk and go live in the woods or become some barefoot hippie and, well, I actually probably go live in the woods. Woods is a good place to live. That's my backup plan in case anyone hasn't. But yeah, I'm not saying you have to do that. There are means and ways to use these tools. The problem is that social media isn't the neutral tool that it necessarily once was. Say the MySpace days, as I think we were reminiscing of before we started the podcast, was a whole different kind of world. It was, you went to your friends' walls, you put up your own shit, and you presented yourself. And, you know, most of us learned basic coding. We spent hours finding the best songs that we wanted and getting the better quality MP3s. You know, we were talking about like MSN Messenger and that as well. Like, they were quite neutral tools. They were ultra connective. And you then went out and saw others. And from that, communities grew and developed, and then other websites where they would teach you how to code, teach you how to add other things, then forums where you'd meet other people and connect, and it just became a real online social space. But then in the birth of Facebook and other more modern social media platforms, it's become so overgoverned and regulated by the algorithms and by trying to target advertising and generate revenue that the user experience for most people it's that hypnotic muscle memory. You're there because your thumb is still fucking scrolling and your eyes won't lift. You're not interested in the movie you took 2 hours scrolling on Netflix to watch. You're not grounded. You're not actually present. You're trying to find that dopamine that you believe is only present in screens.
Yeah, and a bit of I don't know whether it's a controversial opinion, but you know the way I imagine you hate newspapers. I hate newspapers because the news is basically to achieve their more often not political leanings. The reason I don't sort of have a hatred for the news or newspapers is because unfortunately, they give the news that people want to see. Whether they say they do, the reason that the news isn't positive is because positive news is nice, but it's not what gets your attention. David Beckham cheats on wife. Who's he cheating on with? David Beckham donates £1 million to a charity. Oh, that's nice. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So newspapers are giving you the information that sells newspapers, which is their job. Unfortunately, the human psyche is much more, because of, I imagine, survivalism. We're much more alert and interested in negative news than positive news, because positive news is safe, negative news is dangerous, and I must read this because potentially life and death. Do you know what I mean? When we were cavemen. So it's just another perspective on news. It's not them. They've given us the news that we want to see, whether we believe it or not.
Exactly that. Systems are people, and people are you. And it's a difficult thing, but this is why, again, I think the idea of an individualist awakening is something so terrifying to neoliberalist, what I suppose we'll say is late stage capitalism that we're currently living on, because we can't then be corralled toward this single thing of going, well, oh, you're a posh type. What, I can't even think of how I'm going to phrase that. Like, prep kind of university educated individual. Boom, you're this. All right, you're a council estate, this. You're boom, you're this. And all of these artificial like constructs that then arise from this is then a dilution and a loss of humanity. It negates our ability to be anything at any given point. And I think that's what a free society is that I've known, and we revel in them in our society, people that have really reformed their lives, committed violent crimes, even murder, and then turned their lives completely around and done such acts of good that obviously, they will never truly atone for what they have done, but they have sought to spend the rest of their time on earth to try and do what they can. And so people have to be allowed to make those mistakes, to be real and to be raw. And in the early stages of the internet, I felt like we had that. It was a fucking Wild West. But you could change your personality and move through subcultures and groups, but everything now is homogenized. It's weird. I look outside and I see the same, what I suppose would be termed chav, for all it's an outdated, contentious kind of word, lasses that are now dressing in the same way that they derived individuals for when they were at school. There is this kind of like say homogenizing of human experience, and but it's for we put on these kind of uniforms and act out these roles. We're cosplaying characters rather than finding out what, like you said, I suppose this again sound a bit hippy dippy, but what makes our heart sings, the thing inside of us that resonates, you know, that vagus nerve, this big cluster of nerves here, whatever fires that thing, fucking listen to it, because that's where you belong. You may not think it may be the complete opposite of the trajectory you're trying to force your life to be and struggling with, because we're not often attuned to what we're actually capable of. And that's what I was saying before about kind of finding those markers and listening to kind of the interesting journey of life.
We said that, I don't know if it was recorded or not, but we said at the beginning, I think there's a place for conspiracy theorists. I think there's a place for when I say place, that's wrong. That makes me sound like I'm superior, but I do not. The people who've got conspiracy theories, the people who go as far extreme and like say there's the COVID has created them pigeons, we're tracking pigeons and they're all watching you. Like, I honestly think there's a space and a place for them to be. I wouldn't want to get rid of them, because however extreme or crazy the ideas are, it makes you go, actually, the moon landing. I'm actually, you know what? I've just believed what I was told. Let me look into it. You look into it. Flat Earth conspiracy theorists makes me go, well, I've just agreed to what was been told to me. Do I actually know? Let's go and find out the science that proves that the world is round, and let's go and find out if they're right. Do you know what I mean? It's like I believe like it's the challenge, challenge everything.
If you can't test what you believe to be true, then it's belief, and if you won't test it, then it's a pretty shitty belief. Because if you truly believe something, you want to test it, you want to reassure it, because if you are conscious of yourself, you want to be questioning your beliefs, because you are not what you believe.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing for people to understand, but if you're then born and raised a Catholic, you think, oh, I'm a Catholic. But no, you were, I don't want to say indoctrinated, I don't want to offend any Catholics out there or whatever, but whatever paradigm, and this is something controversial that I say to people that people often shout at me, I believe there's no such thing as neutrally raising a child. There's in some way an imprinting of individually or socially negative behaviors, traits, patterns, traumas, etc. And then that's the kind of the generational curse, as they talk about it, you know, as we're seeing now to be scientific through DNA and like blood memory, genetic memory through Holocaust survivors and the studies that have been done there. And I've lost my point again.
It happens to me all the time. I want to say, I'll jump in on. Look, I've me nan gave this to me when I was 18. The chains, no, but that's obviously the cross, and then the little three things are from my kids. So I was born and raised a Catholic. My mum was Catholic, went to church every Sunday, all that sort of stuff. And I will agree with you, it was indoctrination. It was not my belief. It was just I listened to what people told me. Now I am agnostic, so I don't think I don't have all the answers. So I'm not going to say that there isn't a God, because there could be. You know, I'm not smart enough, or we're just human. There could be. We don't know what's fucking out there. But I'm also saying that I don't believe that there is a God. I don't believe that there isn't a God. I'm on the fence.
Yeah.
So I'm agnostic, but I still like the cross. My nan got it for me when I was 18, and when I might, it's 17 years ago. So it means a lot.
It's an object that then carries meaning. You know, I guess in the same way, like one of the reasons I love sort of the bling your buds things, and it was a gift from Bob, which I really, really appreciate. I need to get it cleaned. Actually, it's getting a bit dull. But I love the art of it. Firstly, that you're always in permanent possession. It's made from a cannabis flower, but you're protected by wealth because it's wrapped in gold. They can't have attested to punish you for possession. So it's an artistic statement in that way. But also I like to wear it as that in position of a cross, because it represents what I believe in. And cannabis to me is freedom. It is the ability to truly explore and be critical of your own consciousness, of your own inner space. And I think, again, that's something the establishment and the system kind of doesn't want us to do, which leads me on to a point I've really wrote quite in big letters here in my notes and want to talk to you about, which is social media censorship of cannabis, you know, working with MPK and whatever else. Obviously, you guys have, you are horticultural, you grow crops and whatever else. Obviously, there is maybe in the Venn diagram of things, a large crossover of the cannabis culture and legacy space.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're moving into a more lawful, like the creation of lawful industries, and they're meeting the same problems in a lot of ways. The average, pothead stoner posting a couple of joints on the gram is finding this kind of censorship, this blanket kind of war. And yeah, I just want to kind of get your comments on it.
So censorship of cannabis is an interesting one because it gets labelled under the same. You'll know this better than me. Cannabis as a drug comes under the same band as, please correct me, because cocaine, it's not heroin's class A, but it comes under cocaine, it comes under LSD. A lot of, I know there'll be other drugs in there that are actually harmful, but cannabis is not one of them. So one of the reasons that we set up MPK Media is because if people who remember us from 5-6 years ago will remember the term changing the view. And basically we wanted to, through storytelling, we wanted to help give different perspectives to things that have got a stigma or that have got an elephant in the room that people don't speak about, and just show the other side. Whether we agree with it or not, we wanted to show the other side and give people, well, this is what you've been told, but have you thought about it like this? And cannabis being so prevalent, it was one of the main subjects that we wanted to get out there and talk about. We wanted to work with, in the hydroponics industry, they got heavily associated with cannabis. So we were like, look at all the other stuff that can be done with hydroponics. Look at this tobacco. So 2015, we helped set up an indoor tobacco factory because they were basically doing research. This was the beginning of vape pens. The vape pens didn't exist. They were trying to find the best plants to grow, to extract the nicotine, to put into nicotine vape pens to make it obviously potentially healthier. And that was all done hydroponically, and to show people like, this is the other side. This is the super professional side that you don't get to see. And we wanted to show people because people have this stigma with the hydro industry. They have a stigma with the cannabis industry. I'll talk about cannabis because it's better known. If you talk to people 10 years ago and said, tell me about a typical cannabis user, they would go, lazy, plays Xbox all day, eats lots of takeaways, junk food, unclean, doesn't wash himself, greasy hair, long greasy hair. It's not somebody I'd want to associate with. Funnily enough, that type of person does exist, but there's probably 1% of people who consume cannabis. The other people, you've got business people, you've got people who use cannabis to give them energy, people who use it, I know you hate this, but people who use it for its medicinal benefits.
Hey, I use it for its medicinal benefit.
No, I mean, like, you hate it being called a medicinal plant.
No, it's medical is what I dislike. Medicinal, yeah. I think, is the better terminology. Yeah, I think medical just it speaks to capture and co-option by the pharmaceutical industry. Because a medical thing has to come from pharmaceutical and vetted and all whatever, whereas all cannabis can be used medicinally. Do you know what I mean? It's how you use it, how you grow it, and what you choose to do with it, you know?
Yeah, and there's just this huge plethora of people that do not fit what people perceive to be cannabis users. And I thought, I'm going to try and change that with my media company. I'm going to try and change the view of what people perceive cannabis users to be. And I'm also going to change the view on how cannabis is used. Potentially, I'm not you I don't know whether you class yourself as an activist or whether that's a good term, but there are activists who want to change the political and legality of cannabis. I thought, I'm a little bit removed from that. I want to help document and tell stories to help those people, such as yourself, achieve their goals, which is to decriminalize and allow people who want to use it easier access and not to be victimized because they use it. And just play my little my little role and my little part in helping that. And that, yeah, so coming back to social media censorship, it's tough because you've got some really great companies that want to do great work and they just can't. And marketing in the cannabis industry is incredibly tough because you can't run ads, you're so restricted, and it's in my eyes it's a crime because it's free speech. Do you know what I mean? So I think Elon Musk for X or Twitter, because I'm not going to call it X, no one is. I think he might be helping with the reducing censorship, but for every other platform, if you don't agree with it, make your own platform, build your own community. Like, if you don't agree with something, don't use it. Go and do your own thing, or go to a platform that doesn't have censorship around the subject you want to talk about. And if it does, build your own platform, or build a community. It's free to set up blogs or whatever you want to do. Set up your own community. The problem there is what's it called? What's the word where you bring a community of like-minded people together? You're just all like, yeah, I agree, and yeah, I agree, and the government's corrupt and blah, and this group think you don't achieve anything. You just all think the same, and nothing actually gets developed. Whereas if censorship was removed from platforms and people could post, you would have that really good debate. You'd have people like my mum 10 years ago going, I'm not going to take that because it's illegal. It must be bad for you. And having those conversations and educating people like my mum who did believe that at one point. But yeah, it's tough. And hopefully censorship is sort of coming to a little bit of an end and we'll have a little bit of more freedom of speech moving forwards. Fingers crossed.
I do hope so. I mean, this traditional kind of legacy media is really struggling, and Twitter at its peak was basically everybody was an everyday reporter. If you saw something and you captured it, you could become the source on it effectively until somebody got on the ground, and it became really disruptive in the media space. And now with podcasts, there's the prevalence that they are and everything else, there's almost an oversaturation of information, but people almost don't know how to digest it. And because of the way certain algorithms work, I mean, YouTube has apparently cleaned up its act. But if you go onto one side of a debate, 48% into one side of a debate, 10 videos in, you're in the 1% of the belief, the hardcore of that side of whatever it is. And that's permanently affected your algorithm and the content that you're viewed. And it's that manufacturing of our worldview to keep us in dissent. Whereas I don't believe censorship is the answer to bad speech. The answer to bad speech is better speech. Yeah. If somebody says something outrageous and fucking stupid, then people, frankly, you pile on, but without ad hominem attacking the individual, without researching and doxing or whatever else, you just destroy the speech. But because of trolling and everything else that has arisen within this space, and people that are just so, what are we calling it these days, terminally online, their social skills have never really kicked in. Their muscles have atrophied in this space, so they don't know how to behave and hold themselves, but they can cause great disruption because that negative reaction, as we described earlier with selling newspapers, is what makes Facebook work. They know that they amplify negative shit, and whatever's getting more negative reaction, boom, let's make more of that because that's getting more clicks, more faces, more time on Facebook, more ad revenue. And so we
know this ourselves. I'm not going to attribute this just to women, but we do this ourselves. When Facebook was the platform where we all used to post, everybody has experienced the woman, probably men do it as well, but the woman who posts 3 or 4 likes, 1 or 2 comments, she realizes when she posts something dramatic has happened in her life. Oh my God, can't believe Harry did that to Sally. Oh my God, babe, what's happened? Comment, 50 likes, makes the person who's posted feel liked and important. Then she goes back to posting normally. And she's like, I'm not getting the same reaction. Oh my God, can't believe what Trevor did to Sandra. My God, babe, what's happened? Are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And, do you know what I mean? We do it ourselves. We are conditioned to doing what makes us popular or makes us feel good or gives us that dopamine kick. So you can't just blame the papers because we do it ourselves. And I've done it. I've literally, hopefully I feel like I've got the awareness to counter all this. But on my personal Instagram, I only set that up recently because Libby Our marketing manager told me to, because it will help our business grow. People don't buy off brands, they buy off people. Set up my own Instagram. And I was fuming because I've never had a personal Instagram, and I don't feel a need to post. I don't feel interested enough to post. And I'm looking through my pictures and I'm realizing the majority of my posts or videos start with a picture of me. And it's because the algorithm or whatever, people are more likely to interact with a picture of a person that they see rather than a picture of a cup or something mundane. And I'm realizing I have been conditioned. I started to post more pictures that have got me in them with my face, or a video that starts with me in the face, because it's getting more views, it's getting more likes, and that makes me feel it's doing its job better. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I've gone off on a fucking tangent here, but yeah, we're all conditioned and we're all fallible. It's just trying to be mindful. Am I going to change me posting pictures of my face to try and get more likes, more views to help my business? No. If that's what gets me more views and more likes, I'm going to have to do more of it because I want my business to grow.
But you're going to be conscious of it, so therefore you're not going to get caught in the trap of your own ego. And exactly what you said, that you can understand how to game the system for the output that you want, but it's then remaining again like to not get lost into the allure of the rest of the platforms. You know, they are tools. I've said this to a lot of people recently. What I've kind of gone back to of my reverting from social media presence at the minute is work. Boom, here's a podcast. There's the link. It's no offense, guys. I'm not going to read any comments. I'm not going to interact. I'm still struggling of how to get back to having that positive relationship with social media without it feeling like no matter how I write something, somebody's going to react in a way that's going to cause a tree of responses that by the 100th comment, they're all just attacking each other and nobody's actually addressed whatever the hell it was I was trying to say at the top. And because I'm quite articulate, I've ended up becoming a writer against all of my younger belief. I tried again to get everything into the best, most concise, here's the thing. And it gets same. I fall into those traps, and it's that mastery hill, as you were always saying. It's you have to then, rather than falling in gravity kind of taking its toll on you at the start, you have to constantly check yourself. Otherwise you will trick yourself into believing you're at the summit. And that's when you can fall backwards. Do you know what I mean? And get lost within a field, within a space, within, and I think that's a few people are mindful of. And again, just because of the nature of social media, of our modern world, really, it's too easy to just fall in the flow of it. It's like to be conscious is to stand against the current of the mainstream narrative. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, all conspiracies are right and lizards are rulers and, fucking David Icke is God or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. To be able to be critical of these things, to be able to entertain them without them becoming you, to hold opinions while you think of them without them tainting your way. They should in some way affect your opinions, but you shouldn't just become them. Do you know what I mean? There's far too many people go, well, this is the new consensus, let's jump onto that. And so you end up with that echo chamber, was I think what you were looking for before.
Yeah.
And we all get lost within them. It's something I struggle with massively with the podcast and the space, which is why I'm trying to reach out into other areas, because I never want to get lost in just cannabis. I love the plant. I love the culture. It's given me my life back and continues to give me a quality of life that I otherwise couldn't obtain. But I don't want to get lost just talking to people that already know or think they know. I do want to educate as many people as possible, but I want to create a body of work that is always trying to find that truth. To never preach the truth, but to be seeking it. I think that's important, whether it be on a platform like this or in our personal lives and our interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, I agree. My message, to be the thing that I would hope people take away, and the thing that I'm sort of shouting about on a personal level, not to do business or anything, is find your own happiness, find out the route to your own happiness, and try and make it not about items, make it about experiences or simple things. I'm sure that the key to happiness for everyone is simple. But it's not so simple to get there. But the key is that the things that will make you happy in life are simple. Getting there is not simple. And the other thing is to have a ridiculous amount of empathy for other people's opinions, because they've formed that opinion based on what's happened in their life. Mm-hmm. And I just see so many people heavily trolling or disagreeing with horrible words to somebody's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's obviously extreme examples to this, like if somebody was to be following a Nazi doctrine online, I would probably, you know what, I probably would try and still deal with that opinion with empathy, because there's a reason that they've got to that belief, and they've probably been manipulated, because it's easy to manipulate us. We're human. They're probably manipulated to achieve a goal of somebody else. There's some bad people in the world as well, but it's just to be kind with your comments on, because we're talking about social media. Be kind with your comments, and if you need to, the tool that I use is radical empathy to disarm people with negative comments. If somebody says something horrible, I will literally write a comment, really sorry to read this, the way you formulated your opinion. I hope you're okay, because writing this comment obviously sort of shows me that you're not in a good place. People in good places aren't horrible to other people. So I just want to make sure you're okay. If you're not, feel free to message me. I can talk. And I'm in that sort of tone. Do you know what I mean? Like, not being horrible back to just say, I hope you're okay. Because people who are in a good place don't write horrible shit. People who are in bad places write horrible shit. And so it's not our job to make them feel worse. It should be our job to help them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, you're getting very close to, I guess, what I believe to be universal truth. And it's, as I said before, you are not your beliefs. You are not your actions. You are entirely responsible for them. But the means by which you've arrived at them are not necessarily your fault. That isn't to say, oh, well, I was traumatized as a young person, I was abused or whatever. That doesn't give you carte blanche to do what the fuck you want. That gives you an opportunity to grow as a human and understand things that few will, to live a life authentically that could do some great good in the world if you chose to commit to it. Do you know what I mean? We're all given that opportunity to, again, be authentic and to find ourselves. And these tools can give us that opportunity to find, as Terence McKenna describes it, find the others. But the tribe
I'm going to mute myself for 30 seconds, for 5 seconds, because I've just realised I'm on 2%. I've been talking away. I was on 100% when I started, and I've just thought I'll just double check. I'm on 2%.
Excellent,
excellent
timing.
Charger quick. No, I'll get it plugged in just so we can wrap it up without me panicking.
Yeah, perfect. I was going to say, yeah.
I think there was a lot that we said we were going to talk about. I'm obviously more than happy. I don't think we've covered everything that you wanted to talk about, which is more specific to your channel and your listeners. It was a great conversation. I've really enjoyed that, by the way. But I would love to come back and talk more about what your listeners would want to talk about. Thank you very much.
Well, this is it. It's like I said, the Simpa Life is things that are adjacent to or in my life, things that I care for, I've got connection or the ability to, get various guests and host these conversations for various topics, because I'm obviously seeking to learn and seeking to hopefully bring the audience along with me to learn at the rate that I do live with the people, and get an opportunity to constantly remind themselves, that wonderful childlike moment where you learn something new and you feel like a space in your brain open up, and you're like, I can learn more stuff, and it becomes like another addiction. I think that's something healthy to kind of cultivate. And so I think the topics that we've discussed are perfect for my guests. I think I want to do 2 quick fire ones, and then my final question, which this will wrap up in a few minutes. Obviously, you've described yourself on your Instagram as a book nerd. You've already told us your favorite book. What's your current book and next book, if you've already got them mapped?
So my current book is it be in my bag. Bring my grey bag in for me, because literally it's my new book. I can't tell you the author or even the accurate name. So it's in my bag right now. My I've got a few current books. They're all about marketing and understanding how to market to people, which is, we've discussed basically how to manipulate people. It's how people operate. Thank you very much. It's how people operate, and basically how to sell to them. So it's this one, Greg Hoffman, Emotion by Design, Creative Leadership Lessons from a Life at Nike. I'm probably not even 10% of the way through, because just time and life. This is something I need to dedicate more time to because it makes me feel good. But that is it. So far, it's a really, really good book. And then, so what was that? The current book I'm reading. And what was
Next book, if you've got one sort of in mind.
Next book. Once I've read that, I've got probably 4 or 5 that I've bought that I'm probably going to read. The subject that I get most into is behavioral psychology. So I love to understand why people do what they do. And then to niche down more onto that, it's financial but behavioral psychology. So why people spend money the way they do. And basically to give you that in 30 seconds, or to give that to the listener in 30 seconds, it's the example is if you were to buy car mats for your car, and I said they're £1,000, you'd go, you can fuck off. £1,000 for car mats, you're mad. But then if you're buying an expensive car for £47,000, and you go, we can throw in the car mats £48,000, like, yeah, throw them in. You've still just got car mats and you've still spent an extra £1,000. But when you're spending 47, it's much easier to spend £1,000. When you're not spending anything and you get asked to spend £1,000, that's a big decision. And actually, no, I'm not spending £1,000 on car mats. And I really love the psychology of how people make those behavioral and economic decisions. Dead weird and geeky.
No, I like it, man. I like it. No, it's similar. I read as an affinity. I have an affinity for reading rather because I'm trying to understand myself through the mirror of humanity. I struggle with empathy, not in the sense that I'm not empathetic. I'm a highly empathetic individual, but I struggle to understand people. You know what I mean? I've got a belief that is like, if I was born you, raised you, and lived as you, I would be you. I truly believe I've done more than enough psychedelic experiences to believe that there is just a permeating consciousness that all human experiences, kind of like mushrooms popping up out of the mycelium of Akasha, if you believe in such a concept, like the experience of all past and present being in the ether, as it were. And so, yeah, I have a fascination with just learning about people. So my bookcase is so varied in terms of topics. I mean, I'm finishing Melanie Sykes' book at the minute because she's coming on the podcast again shortly. And then that's kind of contrast with, what's his name? Charles, I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. But his book is Listening to MDMA, Listening to Ecstasy, the Power of MDMA. And it's all about like the studies of research that they've done, starting from it being like the love drug in California all the way through. And it's again to learn these things and read these people's work, to approach them and be like, fancy chatting with us. And just like it's selfish. All of this, as you described earlier, is entirely so selfish. I get to talk to awesome people, have these wicked conversations, get really high, and yeah, take people along for the ride. And it's a wonderful thing. It really is.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love listening. I could talk about books all day. If we get the chance to chat again, I'll make sure I bring 10 books, because I love giving recommendations of books. I love people to read what I've enjoyed.
Do you know?
I also love to get.
So what I'm hearing here is we need to do a crossover podcast series of something where it's just book reviews and we nerd out about books. We read books and go, right, we've read this week, folks.
I'd love to do that.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I've really fallen back in love with reading recently. I think I've nearly through my 3rd book in the past like 10 days, and it's ironic actually. I'm not gonna put myself in trouble for potentially allegedly doing things illegally online with streaming. But there's a service that I may or may not have used previously who recently got a massive attack and took down all of their links and whatever else. And it really made me realize how much time I was wasting just throwing the TV on and touching the phone and being like, I'm being productive. And it's like, no, man, fuck that. And then I turned it off and I'm like, wait a minute, I can smash books. I've got all these books I want to read. It's like redirection of your energy and focus.
And like you said at the beginning, come off the Kindles. It's disgusting. Like, in my perspective, it's disgusting. I just do not understand how somebody can enjoy a Kindle more than that. Like, the wrong person to ask about because I am nerding out on books, but I don't know. There's just something about that you can't replicate. I love
It's a
books, man.
romanticism that, yeah, I mean, I try as much as possible to buy secondhand. I love
Yeah,
going to charity shops and old bookshops, and there is something to it. It's locked knowledge in a world where you think of Winston Smith's job in 1984 to edit today to make yesterday the truth, where movies can be changed as they change from streaming services, physical media, whether it be DVDs or whatever. I've still got mini discs up in the loft. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I've got shit that now, if you listen to it on Spotify, there's probably bits edited from tracks and lost and whatever else, and that's the version so many people will come to know. And we have to hold these things sacred, and books are. They're a link to history that is unbreakable. That's why the Nazis had book burnings, the Christians had book burnings, the KKK had book burnings. And insert your group burned books. It's because of the power of the written word. It's phenomenal. It's why I think I've ended up in this space, as I've recognized that's what my voice is I feel inferior in my day-to-day existence, but in my words, in my written word, and in the way I try to convey things, I think that's where I found my happiness, is being heard and being understood and responding and being humble enough to not, or try to believe I'm humble enough to not be preachy, to try to learn in real time and to have these open, raw conversations, you know?
Yeah. And the good thing about where your happiness is, your happiness can't be taken away from you because you can get in front of a mic, and if you're heard by one person, I think it obviously feels good to be heard by more people. If you can be heard by one person, it's a conversation.
Mm.
Like I really love to get that message across. Like physical things, it's not happiness, but being heard
Yeah.
is a simple thing. It is a
Mm.
simple thing, and helping others is a simple thing. And I
Mm.
truly believe that's it. Happiness is a simple thing, but getting there is probably not that simple.
I think we have to, ultimately what we've learned from this is you almost have to train yourself into being able to identify happiness. And I've got a little cheesy plaque above my fire that I've had for a long time. It came as one of those trinkety things, like live, laugh, love almost. And it
Yeah,
says, happiness is not the destination, it's the journey. And I've kept it because fuck me, for all to the cliche of cliches, it's true. As we were saying at the start of this, with putting the thing in the future. Yeah, I may be happy if I achieve that in the future, but you know what? Today I'm going to do something that's going to make me happy, or I'm going to work towards the thing that'll make me. I will find happiness within the moment, within the now, and then from that, bring me closer to achieving my goal. But if I believe that I'm unhappy now, or I am unhappy, obviously, the certain circumstances we described before obviously can make you unhappy. But through gratitude and recognizing, I suppose, your position in the web of humanity is not fixed, and to understand that this is not your final destination. This is not where you're meant to be. It's just where you are right now.
it is cliche, but what you've just said, happiness is not the goal; it's the journey. But the reason why it's so powerful is when you really think about it. And this is I'm stealing this from a podcast I've listened to. Um, the journey and the destination, with that in mind, it's never you should never have a goal. So if you want to be happy, never have a goal that's achievable.
Mm.
So if your goal is to have a six pack, you'll achieve that. Then what? I want an
Mm.
eight pack. Then what?
Mm.
I want to be able to bench 100 kilos. Then what? And you're just always seeking something different. The goal should be something that's unachievable. My goal is to be healthier.
Mm.
It's unachievable in terms of because healthier today, healthier tomorrow, you could always be healthier. So it's always something that you can work towards, and it's a journey. So you can be healthier every day. So your goals should be, in a way, unachievable, and then you'll
Mm.
be happy because then you're always on the journey.
If they're
And then if
if they're timeless, then yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I'm the same. We're the same age. I turned 35 last month, or this month. When are we on? Last month, and immediately went, all right, I'm 45 years. What can I do over the next 5 years that when I arrive at 40, I am in the best position, that I am taking responsibility for my aging, for my life, for my work, for my position within humanity. And I think that's ultimately what I believe it is to be human, is taking responsibility. For all we're limited via law, etc., and whatever, you are still responsible for your waste, whether it be your bodily waste or it be your baggage and luggage that you bring into the world. It's yours. It's you
yeah,
have to deal with it, not alone. You don't have to carry it alone. Others will help you. But we have to be open and raw and real with each other to recognize we're all carrying the baggage. We all have the void. We all have the addiction. We all have the same thing within us. And it's, if we could all sit together and truly reveal ourselves, as many of us have done with MDMA, or on fires at festivals and whatever, we laugh at the absurdity of what we believe to be our uniqueness and the things that trouble us, because we all feel the same and think the fucking same.
You do. And I think to make it specific, to make that sort of cliche story specific to you and probably your listeners, is, would you class yourself as an activist?
I've struggled with it over the years. I used to initially with fervor, and then in latter years, as I believe the market space of ideas and whatever else got diluted and corrupted. But I feel I am an activist in that I'm active in the space and I'm fighting for an end goal that I am willing to change and transmorph on the belief of the people that I'm fighting for and with.
Yeah. So the two variations of what I think would make you happy is if your goal was to make cannabis legal, the journey to making it legal is where you are most happy, because it's what you do, it's your passion. When it becomes legal, what then?
I obviously I'm not sort of fighting for legal, because obviously cannabis is legal. It's about humans that are sort of criminalized. There's a whole nuance there that I'm not going to kind of go into, but I get the sentiment you're meaning, that post the war, what would I kind of do? This is why already in the podcast, what I do is I care for human rights and for the underdog. It's going to sound a bit, again, cliche, but because of the upbringing I had, because of the abuse that I suffered and the life that I lived and not being believed, having a voice and giving voices to people, like I'm known in the space as the what about guy. You know, I sit in all of the like council groups and whatever else, and I go, yeah, what about this guy? And the lowest, the worst possible person, because that person exists because 9 times out of 10 I've fucking been that person. And so
voice of the voiceless.
Cannabis is the front, then it's the drug war, then it's everything else. And I believe that if we win cannabis first and make it a ubiquitous resource and, you know, deschedule it and as a plant, and then decriminalize human nature and all the crimes that go along with it, we've got an opportunity to level the playing field. And from that, empathy instantly flows, as we've seen in the States, towards natural psychedelics and MDMA and ketamine and various of the drugs. And then we start to get more empathy toward opioids and various things there. And it builds towards a better society. Ultimately, my belief is I want this, and this is where I think I've kind of got something in my own head that I'm like, I've won this. I want to die in the world I want to have lived in. That's my end goal. I don't know when I'm going to die. It might be a day, but you know what? I live in the world I want to live in. Today, I speak my truth and I've held that person accountable. I've questioned that fucking thing. I've sent that email. I've got, sometimes unnecessarily outraged at something and gone off and dealt with something or whatever and messaged somebody in some group or council or advisory position or whatever and voiced my opinion. But in doing that, I am happy each day. I have been authentically me and I have sought to achieve that goal. And it's so illusory in a state that it's not manifest as a physical thing. It's not foundational. It moves. Do you know what I mean? So each day I learn more that goes, actually, it's not over there. It's over here. And we have to do this and this. And it's having that fluid kind of response to it. I've been in a bit of a depressive state for a while. And obviously the microdose and psychedelic experiences, the things we do in personal life are helping to take this kind of load off me. And what happened was I basically got burdened with this feeling that I was the only one that could speak as me. And if I didn't speak, no one would speak for me. And then I realized that I'm not necessarily speaking for me because I don't want to live in necessarily and work in the space that I want to create. I just want it to fucking exist. And if it's going to exist, I want to be left the fuck alone. So the ideal cannabis laws or whatever it looks like is I can just go, I am done. Everybody is safe. No one will ever go to prison. There's not, 29 grams and the limit's an ounce. So you're going to prison now. Do you know, like, there'd be none of that shit. It would just, in that world, I'd step so far out of this, but I would have already worked onto a plateau in a space that I would be useful in. I feel like I'm best as an adaptive individual to learn and find my meaning by participation. I have very little selfish desire within me. There's few things that I crave, and the things that I crave are timeless and moneyless. I crave a week in the woods, building my own shelter with my own hands, Do you know what I mean? Sleeping under the rain, sleeping in the dirt, having a fire, you know, like having a DMT and Changa experiences, taking maybe a bit of MDMA and mushrooms, you know, walking around barefoot for days on end till like my body skeletal frame starts to readjust, and feeling primal and rawly human, to connect with my lineage of ancestors far beyond linguistics, of just what you said before, to be authentic and real in nature. It doesn't lie. It's true. So that my ideal is that, yeah, if I owned a house, I had a nice bit of fucking land on it. But you know what I'd do? I'd still fuck off into some woods.
Yeah.
I crave to be in the element, to be just under my own esteem, to be that bird training its wings in that tree. Because no matter how I deal with, there's the perception, I was struggling too much, the tree is going to break. Whereas now I've gone back to training my wings. I'd forgotten to keep training my wings, and I got lost in the weight of it and the worry of the storm. But the storm is passing and more will come. But now is the time to train those wings. And that's what I was saying about preparing for 40. It's doing the best that I can. And its health is another one, as you said. It's unobtainable because it means something different each day. But because of that, it's obtainable, but it's not.
Yeah. I love that. Two things. I think the bird on the branch is sort of, for me, that sort of says, don't rely on yourself, don't rely on anybody else. If you just if you can look after yourself, you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I could look into it, because eventually it's a bit negative, but people always let you down. But if you just look after yourself, and if you look after yourself, then you can help others. That's you can probably take a few meanings from it. And then,
if everyone looked after ourselves in that way, we'd have excess to look after each other, and therefore we wouldn't need. It's one of those paradoxes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I agree with that. Like you can't help somebody if your cup's half full. Make sure your cup is full, and when with the overflow, help as many people as you want. So it is. So having said all this about loving and helping everyone, make sure you look after yourself first.
100%.
And then the one of the probably the final things that I'll say, which I find brilliant, is if I could give you £10 million tomorrow, would you take it? Don't think too much into it.
I would. Yeah. I hate the money, but I would take it.
You would take, and I hope everybody would, because if somebody comes along and gives you £10 million, you would take it, because you could do whatever, do a lot of good, you can look after whoever, you would take it. If I was to give you £10 million, but say you would die tomorrow, would you take it?
No, because it's not enough to achieve what I would want. I would feel proportional to my sacrifice.
So waking up tomorrow with your health is worth more than £10 million. It's not mine. I've completely robbed it, but I love it.
It's beautiful. It's simple, but it's true and effective. It's a great exercise, and it's right.
So there you go. And you can do that pretty much with any amount, because I wouldn't die tomorrow for any amount. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. No, that's a wonderful way to summarize this.
I would definitely do another podcast, because I think what I expected this to be a chat about. We haven't talked about any of it. We're just going off on one.
I was going to say, when we first messaged, and you're like, "Yeah, I've got an hour," and I was like, "Yeah, we'll see. Everybody says it's an hour, and I'm like, "No, man," because there's just so much. Because it's everything tangents in a way, and it's that interconnectivity, and it's conversations like this that people crave. It's what they want to find in the smokers area of a pub on a Thursday, Friday night. You know what I mean? It's what people at festivals are, bright-eyed at 4 a.m. chatting shit on the hillside, waiting for the sun to come up. It's that connectivity. So yeah, man, definitely got to get you back on, because there's a lot to talk about here. But yeah, I'm gonna let you go, because I think we've said everything we need to say for today, and I think we've given some positivity into the world. And yeah, it's been a true pleasure and a privilege. I really appreciate your time, man.
I'm looking forward to seeing you at Product Earth and seeing you up on stage. I always enjoy your talk. So credit to yourself as well today, for the chat, because I genuinely did have an hour. But conversation is brilliant, and I will put stuff off to have good chat. So it's like, it's not, if it was shit chat, I would have definitely got to an hour. So thank you as well for your time and having a good conversation. I appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you Product Earth, mate.
Yeah, man, few weeks, and that's actually really good. So yeah, I'll let you jump off now. I'll do some housekeeping, including a promo for Product Earth. But yeah, it's been a Pleasure, Stephen. We'll catch up in a few weeks of Product Earth. So take it
on.
easy, man. We'll speak soon. I'll drop you the link for too long.
Probably. See you in a bit. Take care.
Right. Peace. Bye.
Bye.
Well, there you go, folks. That was Stephen Brookes. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. Didn't expect it to get so, I guess, philosophical. Yeah, I think definitely gonna have to get him back on the podcast to actually discuss like kind of the hydro side of things. There's a lot of questions here on my notes that I wanted to discuss with him. But yeah, we we kind of just went off on several tangents there, but I think everything was interconnected and it wove into hopefully what I hope, again, what I hope to that you guys will have got from this is sort of an insight into Stephen, into kind of his business, his ethos, his kind of the work that he does. There's so much here that we didn't get into, like with the drone pilots, sort of the work that he's been doing there, as in sort of, sorry, he's a licensed drone pilot, and the work that he does with drones at the media company as well. But I think it was great to have that kind of raw and authentic conversation about marketing and media manipulation and what that is from somebody whose job it is to utilize these things. I think it's rare that you can kind of have that kind of conversation. So yeah, I enjoyed the authenticity of it, the vulnerability, I guess, in some ways of it as well. That was a really insightful conversation. So yeah, definitely going to get him back on in the future, and who knows, maybe we'll start an online book club podcast, an alternative book club, because yeah, more people need to read books. I do have a strong affinity for the written word, as some people may have gathered from the work that I do. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please do give us a like, share, subscribe, or rating on whatever podcast platform you're on. I know obviously these days I'm on quite a few, but wherever you are currently listening to this or watching this, please do go over the ratings and give me an honest review. I'm not going to ask you for 5 stars or 10 out of 10 or whatever the current rating system is on that platform. Give me an honest review. I want to learn, to grow, and develop this platform. I know actually I kind of said on the during this recording that I don't really read comments. I meant that more on social media. YouTube, I don't consider it social media. I am trying to interact more with these the comments that are left on these episodes. So I will be trying to respond to people. So if you have something to comment on for today, please do drop it below. I will try to keep an eye on it when this is released, and yeah, try and keep a conversation and a discourse going, because I think as one of the bullet points of the previous podcast, as in what we've just recorded, was it's communication, it's conversations. That's what's gonna, move us forward. Well, not just as people, but as a species, ultimately, I believe. So yeah, do all of that. Do all of that. If you really enjoyed this, do check us out on patreon.com/the Simpa Life, or for less than a cup of coffee a week or a month. I think it's a month. I don't know. Coffee is inflation these days. Depends where you buy a coffee, I suppose, and what you get in your coffee. But for a small monetary sum, you can help support this little project of mine. For all, I'm saying I'm not really on them. I'm trying to look at different alternatives at the minute, but I am on most social media platforms at The Simpa Life or /The Simpa Life. Check out thesimpalife.com as well for exclusive blogs, articles, and other content. You've been wonderful. I very much look forward to seeing you next week with somebody. Be awesome. You'll love it. All right. Peace and love, folks.